Alright, we are. Yeah, I think we're live. Yes, we are.
Indeed. Yes, just got the notification. So yes,
Alright.
live we are.
Salutations, Legion of Doom. Welcome to Podcast the Storm, where socially awkward outcasts, crazy weirdos, and all around nerds convene to talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co host, the nerdy occultist, Dalton Mortimer,
Yes. Hello everyone.
and our guest, plural, the rabbit presidential candidate, Timothy Lim,
That's me.
along with the bright vice president artisan Mark Pellegrini. And I hope I'm
Hey.
saying the last name right.
Yeah, you got it right. How's
Okay.
it going?
We are doing fine, Mark. How about you?
I can't complain. So what's up? What's the topic for tonight?
Well, we got several, but first one is just we're talking about Robert Pattinson as Batman. Just kind of
Oh,
starting off light before we jump into the meat.
well, everybody was complaining about that when it was announced, and they're like, oh no, Robert Pattinson, the guy from Twilight, he's Batman.
He's never going to live that down.
Yeah, well,
to,
that's
to
the
be
thing.
fair,
Is
I
that,
don't think he's ever going to be able to get past it. It probably
Yeah.
didn't help that he decided to do like really Oscar baity independent movie type stuff afterwards.
Hey, if
Like
Michael
the
Keaton can get over being Mr. Mom and become Batman, then there's hope for everybody. But I mean, fact of the matter is, I mean, everyone's like, "Oh, this is terrible. This is terrible." Like, have you actually watched
well,
Twilight? Because who the hell watched
in
Twilight?
in honesty though, did he ever really get past being Batman? Because
Yeah.
even his like big Oscar bait claim to fame was a take on his sort of Batman
Birdman. Yeah.
anxiety. Yeah.
I need to see that film.
I mean, I heard it was good. I never got around to seeing it either, though. But no, I mean, I think people can get over their roles. Like Bruce Willis, he was another comedy actor who managed to turn into, he before he did Die Hard, he did Moonlighting, and he still managed to become a great action star. So anybody can get out of a role if they try hard enough. This Pattinson guy, honestly, I have no opinion of him because I have never seen Twilight.
I think the biggest issue is that he didn't try to do anything big after Twilight. He just sort of let
Yeah.
himself sink into obscurity, kind of.
Well, maybe this is his chance then. He won't turn what the hell? What's the name of the guy who played Anakin Skywalker in
Christian Hayden.
Hayden Christensen.
yeah,
Oh.
Hayden Christensen? Yeah, what did he do after the prequels? He faded
Jennifer.
into obscurity. He just kind of
He bailed entirely.
exactly.
Not that I can blame him. I mean, half the world was like wanting his head on a spike. So,
Yeah.
yep. What
Uh,
about you, Tim? Any thoughts? You've been quiet.
No, I mean, I agree with Mark. I don't want to be the person to jump down an actor's throat simply because history and experience has taught us that actors who were kind of reviled just for being announced in their casted role, they have shown occasionally that they can rise above the criticism and then instantly be forgiven and then forgotten for what people were saying that was going to happen. And so
to be
I
fair, this
don't
always
know.
happens with Batman. Every time a new Batman actor gets cast, or even, and everyone should remember this: when Heath Ledger was cast as the Joker, everyone was like, "What? Why?"
Gay cowboy. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, especially on
And
Ain't It Cool News. Like they used to be the only place you could really get the inside scoop for Hollywood gossip and advanced news for castings and stuff like that. And I remember that they were having a conniption about Heath Ledger's casting. And the interesting thing about that was that I had never seen any of his movies, so I couldn't be an arbiter of how I felt like he would do as the role. And same thing with Mark. I mean, I laugh at Twilight because on its premise, it's just not something that interests me. But I mean, I don't know, in the role that women seem to like. Obviously, I think he delivered on some aspect. So it shows that he has chops to do what is tasked of him. So I'm not going to try. I'm not going to preemptively judge him based on that.
it also has been a good number of years since Twilight, so he probably doesn't
Yeah.
look like a boy band stick figure anymore.
No,
So
probably not. And I mean, you said that he hasn't really done much, but he's done indie films. I mean, there's a chance that maybe he's matured as an actor, kind of going back to basics and doing smaller stuff. So, I mean, there's always a chance that he's
I
a
just
lot better
hope
now.
my biggest hope is that he didn't develop an ego while he was in the middle of doing all those Oscar bait type movies.
I
Because
think being in Twilight, being in like 6 of those movies, probably humbled the hell out of him.
well,
That's-
but one wonders if like he might have dove into Oscar bait to kind of get his scruples
Street
back,
cred,
as it
yeah.
were. And I just it always irks me whenever an actor thinks they're above the role or think they're slumming it for a role, because that never seems to go well
yeah.
with what you want is somebody who is a good character actor who understands the value of the character they're playing. Perfect example is Matt Ryan as John Constantine, who was basically born to play that role and who very much enjoys that role, because like his fan base is entirely rabid, and for good reason, because he basically embodies everything about that character.
Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about. Like I brought up Bruce Willis earlier, and I mean, if you watch like the last 2 Die Hard movies, the ones that were made, after that like 10-year gap after Die Hard 3, and yeah, he does not give a shit anymore. He just goes and he sleepwalks through those movies, and you can tell that he's just waiting for that check to cash, and he doesn't care. And there's nothing worse than that. I mean, as bad as those movies are, I would I would much rather watch them with someone else playing John McClane than this zombie Bruce
And
Willis.
I think a large part of the reason they were bad in the first place was because of the fact he didn't give a shit.
Oh yeah.
If he had shown up on set ready and raring to go and giving it 110%, I think those movies would at least be more tolerable, because a actor who's committed to the role and having fun with it can save a lot of bad movies.
Yeah, and I mean, but though with Bruce Willis in particular, he hasn't had fun in a role in like 25 years. I mean, if you look at like Bruce Willis in Red, Bruce Willis in G.I. Joe Retaliation, Bruce Willis in The Expendables, Bruce Willis in the newer Die Hard movies, he always plays the same grumpy old
He did
sleepy
okay in
man.
Glass, though. I'll
And
give him
Glass,
credit for that.
okay, was he better in
Yeah.
that? Okay, I'm just so
I think
tired of
because he
sleepy old
was
Bruce.
I think he was better in that because he was excited to return to the role of David Dunn and kind of put a cork in that legacy.
Hey
But
Tim,
yeah,
you saw. Well, Tim saw the Death Wish remake he was in. How was he in that, Tim?
He was good, but he's the same person in every role.
Yeah.
Like you said, he seems tired of, well, not tired, but maybe he's gone to the point where he's comfortable playing that same role in every single movie. So they're all interchangeable. In fact, I mean, heck, I don't even remember his name. I'm pretty sure it's the same as it was in the original, Jack Kiersey. But I don't know for the life of me. He just plays bald Bruce Willis doing awesome things. Actually, there's an inside joke in something that Mark and I worked on. So in Black Ops, we have an agent who's based off Bruce Willis. And sometimes we're asked, well, which Bruce Willis is he based off of? Well, all of them. In the last 10 years, he's played the same bald, kind of raspy voice, I'm too old for this crap, but not ready to retire type character. And honestly, predictability sometimes does not faze me, especially when I know I'm going to be entertained. So I've not had a problem with him in that role.
If you're good at giving me the one thing you're good at, then it doesn't really matter.
Right.
Like Anthony Hopkins will always play an upper crust British gentleman, but
Yeah.
he's very, very good at upper crust British gentlemen.
Oh.
So,
Oh my gosh!
No.
Speaking of which, so I was going to bring this up yesterday, and it completely slipped my mind. So I did not watch Transformers The Last Night in theaters. I read the synopsis, and I laughed so hard that I just thought to myself, no, I like this franchise, but I'm not going to give it my money this time around. So I actually watched The Last Night last week, and I was dying laughing. I mean, it's almost so terribly bad that it's completely entertaining. But Sir Anthony Hopkins, he basically plays a dementia-addled version of himself. So you'll see him do things like he'll swear in basically millennial speak, but he'll do it with a posh British accent, while like slapping his robot
It's just
butler
like,
on the
oh my
butt.
god, I can't believe what I'm watching. Yeah.
Right, like it was like the most it was like the most entertaining slow motion NASCAR train wreck I have ever seen. Actually, a NASCAR car wreck. Sorry.
That was the thing that really ticked me off about the Thor movies for the most part, because he literally sleeps through like half of the first Thor, and it's like, you got Sir Anthony Hopkins to be in your movie,
Right.
and then you made him sleep through half of the movie. Are you high?
Well, maybe they couldn't afford him based on screen time.
Yeah, then in the third one, Ragnarok, didn't he spend most of it like first he was at an old folks' home and then he was just off in like dreamland somewhere and they have like one
And then he
scene with him
died.
when they're sleeping on a hill. Yeah. I mean, he gets that one good line in because it was a good line because it was delivered by Anthony Hopkins where he tells Thor like, "You're the god of thunder, not the god of hammers."
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a good line. It's like,
Yeah, but that's like the only thing
well,
he
yeah,
says in
come to
that
think
movie
of
that I
it.
remember. But yeah, beyond that, I mean,
The thing I remember about Thor Ragnarok is it contains more Doctor Strange being Doctor Strange than did his entire first movie.
yeah, that's because his first movie was
So
just a remake of Iron Man.
So
okay,
for all our
and it
audience
didn't.
in the chat, please take a drink because Dome is about to go on a spiel about Doctor Strange.
Yes, I am sure that is part of my personal drinking game at this point. The thing that drove me nuts about it was uh, like The Matrix was 20 years ago at this point. The Inception was 10 years ago at this point. Um, Movies that have come out just in the last like year have been trippier than the entirety of that movie. And yet the selling point that they kept hammering away at in trailers was how trippy it was. And it's like, this is the best you can do with the entirety of Doctor Strange here? Like, you you didn't service the character because they muted his pre-sorcery assholeness so that he was just kind of vaguely.
Well, so my problem with Doctor Strange was, I mean, I didn't mind the movie so much, but I liked it for those visuals. But my problem with the movie was that they turned Doctor Strange into the same quippy, snarky comedy jerk that Star Lord is, that Tony Stark is, that
Yeah,
Spider Man
yeah,
is.
I,
He
I
was so
couldn't agree
indistinguishable.
more. Like the quips were just
And
like, no.
but I mean, the other thing though was that they didn't balance that. I mean, so he's a comedy relief character in and of himself because he's always joking. Then they gave him his cape, which is alive and is constantly doing comedy relief stuff. So it's like you have a comedy duo. Like, wouldn't it have
Well,
worked
see,
better if he had been serious and the cape had been the comedy relief? So that way he
and
could still be.
I don't even
Yeah.
necessarily think it was the presence of the comedy that bothered me. It was the type of comedy it was. Because Doctor Strange can be funny, but he's funny in the way like dry British humor is.
Yeah.
Like
He's like the straight
he's
man kind
very
of.
he's very upscale, and exactly, he's kind of the cosmic straight man, because his whole thing is when the universe goes all neon technicolor bullshit, he's the guy that says, no, fuck you, get back in line. um and there was just none of that. And the worst thing though was how um poorly paced everything was and how poorly structured everything was, because one minute he's, basically magical Tony Stark, and the next minute he's whining about how he took the Hippocratic Oath, despite the fact that we never see at any point in the entire rest of the movie him giving a shit about the Hippocratic Oath. And then in the very last scene, he finally pulls out something analogous to his original personality, despite the fact that, like, Doctor Strange has a very specific manner of speaking that he didn't speak with the entirety of that movie. And then all of a sudden, when it comes to the Dormammu fight, he goes, Dormammu, I've come to bargain. And it's like, okay, that is something that Doctor Strange would say, but you haven't been talking like Doctor Strange this entire time, so why the fuck now have you decided to pull out a thesaurus? Like, you should have either been speaking that way the entire time and establishing Strange as kind of the world weary intellectual scholar that he's always been, or drop the drop it in the last second and just stick to the character you've established. Personally, I would rather he had been talking like he should have the whole time, but that's because I'm a Doctor Strange fan. But anyway, that's enough of that. That's us getting extremely off topic, and I think we're mostly in agreement that the Robert Pattinson thing is kind of to be determined at this point. So
I'm
next,
cautiously optimistic.
I don't know as you could call me optimistic, but I'm willing to give him a fair shake, just like everybody else. I have my concerns, though.
Well, the director is Matt Reeves, and he directed my favorite trilogy, which is the Planet of the Apes movies.
The remakes.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I think Matt Reeves could do a really good job, especially if they do the smart thing and make Robert Pattinson's Batman a younger version of Ben Affleck's Batman. That would really, I think, make it work quite well. Anyway, next.
yeah, 1 second. Yeah, I'll have windows and tabs open. Okay, so share. So this is one we forgot to cover last podcast, and an article from I believe the Daily Dot. How the straight agenda ruined Avengers Endgame.
The straight agenda? You mean human biology? Oh yeah.
I don't think that's what they mean, but the
The tagline, I believe, says Marvel's obsession with straight romance is why several characters wound up with clumsy endings. So just a bunch of stupid.
actually, I think the main reason why everyone wound up with kind of crappy endings was because they set up an awesome foreshadowing with Avengers Infinity War, and they didn't know how to stick the landing, so they just decided to do basic bitch time travel.
Well, I think so I haven't read that article. We're just going by the clickbait headline title. I think it's almost like they have a genuine criticism, but they're taking the wrong angle with it. And I think just looking at that picture, they chose Captain America, so I assume they're complaining about how he goes back in time to relive his life with Agent Carter.
Yep.
But so that
Well,
is kind of bad because, like, why didn't he fight in Vietnam? Why didn't he fight in Korea? Why didn't he stop 9/11? Why didn't he do all these things when he could have? It raises those questions, and I've heard explanations that he actually went to an alternate timeline, not the real timeline, to go live with Peggy, and so that's why he didn't do this.
But then he apparently jumped back into the main timeline.
I know, and
to
it's
stick around with people, and I'm like,
it was a case of bad writing that left too many questions for people to ask. Like, well, this kind of actually makes Steve look like a big jerk, so it leaves that. So that is a problem in the character's narrative.
There's also the plot hole of the fact that the super soldier serum is supposed to make him more or less ageless, and he very much aged. So, like,
exactly.
What the fuck?
So if you have to go digging up like interviews with the Russo brothers who do no prizes to explain away this or that, then it wasn't a solid storyline conclusion. So that is an actual problem of writing within the movie, in the story structure. It's just that this bullshit article decided to tag something called the straight agenda to it and take an LGBTQ stance.
Well, let's see. Let's actually go through it and see if they can manage to make a substantive argument, or whether or not they're
I'd
just
rather
going to
not.
increasing.
I know.
increasing
Spoiler
amounts of
alert.
stupid-
No.
Yeah.
I mean,
It'll be fun
piss
to
me off
dissect,
having to listen
so
to that.
why not?
This is what we do every week. We torture ourselves with stupid articles.
Yes,
Well-
we basically pick the lowest hanging fruit of pop culture news and essentially kill it with logic.
Well, that's the thing is, there are these clickbait articles all the time, and it's always about something. So, like when Lego Movie 2 came out, all these articles from critics were saying, like, "Oh, it's a tour de force against toxic masculinity," or "Oh, it's got such a great anti-Trump message." And I watched the movie, and I'm like, "What the fuck are you guys talking about?" It's literally about sibling rivalry. It has
The
nothing
reason
to do with
is because they can't see. that ideology is so living rent free in their heads that they can't see beyond it. So every
Exactly.
positive or
But
negative
that's
criticism they
why.
have has to
Yeah, I
be
mean,
couched in that framework.
exactly, but it's so ridiculous, and it's such a circle jerk among them. Where one person puts out an article saying Lego Movie 2 is anti-toxic masculinity, and then every other blog and website and news does basically a uh, rewriting of that exact same article where they just change the proper nouns and change some of the verbiage, and it's almost pointless to even read those
Well, I
articles.
mean, that's what a large part of Gamergate was about, was that kind of sort of in-group nepotism
Yeah.
of Games Journal pros, which was basically a secret list of like proper, in air quotes, games journalists who were basically selling the correct narrative all the time,
Oh yeah.
and how that was impeding the actual merit of their criticism. And because the thing that was impeding said merit happened to be feminism, that led to a lot of people becoming anti-feminist, which led to a lot of people thinking that they were misogynistic because people refused to differentiate between feminism as an ideology and womanhood.
Well, Tim, you saw Endgame, so what did you think about Captain America's final fate in the movie?
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna get crucified because of this. I actually so I think okay, I've been out of listening to comics YouTube for several months now, but I kind of dipped back in just to see what people said about Endgame, and I don't want to offend anyone out there, but I actually enjoyed it, and I think part of it was I went in completely two reasons. One, I went in completely blind, so no spoilers. Second of all, I assumed mentally that this was the last movie in the franchise. So I was able to kind of mentally tell myself there are no other Marvel movies after this one that I'm interested in or care about. I am assuming that this is going to end the character arcs of several characters. Let's see how it goes. So one of the things that I know, like has been mentioned, I've just been kind of quiet on it because everyone is so even people that I really admire on YouTube, who I consider friends, they are so vehement about this ending that I'm like, I don't want to say anything because they basically said, "Hey, if you like this, you're a moron." Well, so my wife, Mark, like, she's a
Yeah.
big Agent Carter fan, right? She, believe it or not, she actually told me like years ago when the Agent Carter series came out. So she has no knowledge of comic books whatsoever. She goes, "Well, I was watching the Agent Carter series, and I noticed something. They always leave ambiguous who her husband is, or like who she ends up marrying. They make it's almost as if they're just trying not to tell you." And I was like, okay. And she said, "Well, didn't you tell me that like in the comics that there's like some time travel thing they do?" And I said, "Yeah, it's the big MacGuffin, the Infinity Gauntlet. They're gonna, it's a time stone." And obviously, when she was talking to me about this, we didn't know about Doctor Strange yet. That the Eye of Agamotto was gonna be a time stone, and she said, "I wouldn't be surprised if at some point he just went back in time and married her." And so when the writers of Christopher, I think is it McNeely, I think, or Feely, and the other guy, they did
McNeely, yeah.
an interview. Right, they did an interview recently where they were like, "We always planned for that to happen." And I know like two YouTubers I can think about were like, "That is bullcrap. You did
Mm.
not plan for that to happen. That was a last minute thing." My wife walked out of that theater with me and was like, "I knew it. I knew that was gonna happen. Like that was great. That was such a great moment." And here I'm thinking to myself, like, I am. I mean, they pretty much assume in the movie that there are no. It's like Thanos is the greatest threat in the universe. He's gone, assuming that everything has gone back to a peaceful or relatively peaceful way of life. You kind of had this cathartic resurrection of old friends and heroes. His journey's done. Like in his for his arc, he's basically like, there is nothing more. There is no greater threat in the universe. I'm gonna, kind of have a jaunt back in time and do what I want to and be with the
Yeah.
love of my life. And so I'm like,
So,
and so like I said, it's a very specific mindset that I walked into where I was like, uh, this is how I went into the movie. That's how I was very satisfied with that conclusion. I can see how people are upset because they're like, no, Steve Rogers would never do that because there's always a threat over the horizon. He would never give up being Captain America. And I'm like, no, I see that too, but I don't know. I just think it's just the way that I prepared myself personally. Actually, to be frank, the thing that upset me the most had nothing to do with that. It was the fact that he gave the shield to Falcon and not Bucky. Like that was the
Yeah.
most obvious politically correct
See,
um,
And Anthony
decision.
Mackie didn't even want to be Captain America. He actually said that in a bunch of interviews that he wanted to stay Falcon so Falcon could be his own character. Yet
see,
that was
you know what my answer to this has kind of always been, because neither of them have the super soldier serum, which is the thing that made Captain America able to be Captain America. Instead of either one of them taking over the mantle of Captain America, have them basically be a buddy cop or buddy secret agent act of, you could call it like the Sons of Shield or something. And this is one of the things that annoyed me was in Endgame we actually see Thanos break Cap's shield, and I thought what would have been really awesome is, instead of having the shield like reforged, each of them gets a half of the shield, and then they go and basically, like I said, do their buddy cop secret agent thing. Because instead of replacing Captain America, which they shouldn't honestly be able to do, and I think it was honestly a mistake making Captain America a mantle in the first place in the comics.
Yeah, Captain America should not be a legacy character.
Yeah.
It's just Steve Rogers. And when
Yeah,
you make someone like Cap a legacy character, especially nowadays where you have all the wrong writers who all have their own agendas, who all have their own biases, it's just asking for trouble.
Yeah,
And
and but instead of having one of them replace Cap, what you could have it be is that they both see Cap as this ideal to live up to, and so the two of them together sort of fills that void where one person would inevitably fall short.
I agree with that. I think that would be a much more organic continuation of that storyline. It'd be better for both of those characters because they both get to remain their own unique individual characters. The problem is that Captain America sells more merchandise than Bucky or Falcon, so corporate wants to keep Captain America on the shelf in one form or another. And that's and what corporate wants with toy sales, corporate gets, and that's the end of it, unfortunately.
And of course, political / moral agenda.
Yeah.
And
Well, with Cap's
story wise too, it's just so weird because so going back, I was watching all of the movies after Captain America: Winter Soldier. So after Winter Soldier, Bucky takes a back seat to the point where he's almost just the end credits guy. Like that's his role. Is hi, I'm end credits guy. Remember me? I was in that movie, but trust me, you will see me in action very soon. And so I think everyone who is familiar with the storyline was like, that's his redemptive arc. He was this like brutal killer, acting out of his own, not in his own will. He needs kind of a lift me up to ascend to something greater, to his former place of prominence. And so yes, they're gonna go with the arc where he becomes the next Captain America. No, like he gets snapped out of existence, comes back for the final fight, and then gets chomped. Where his best friend gives his shield to Falcon instead. So I'm like, you guys should have just killed this guy in Winter Soldier or Civil War.
Honestly,
It didn't even matter anymore.
Would have benefited. But we've kind of already sort of analyzed the article via the title, but let's actually get into the meat of the article and see if anything reasonable can be salvaged from this. I doubt it.
Don't read the whole thing. Just pick like a few parts. Because if you have other questions, like we can be here all night. I mean, and I know Mark has things to do, and I have things to do tomorrow. So just pick a choice bit or two.
Yeah, find the gravy of it.
Okay, well, I guess we'll skip the first part then. Okay, so it's not exactly news that the MCU is dominated by straight white men, both on screen and off. By focusing on the original Avengers team, Endgame highlighted the lack of diversity in Marvel's earlier years, and illustrated how queer storytelling is more complicated than just showing or not showing a gay character on screen.
Oh God, I don't want to read this.
This is just I'm gonna be rolling my eyes all night until I have to go to the hospital.
Okay, but yeah, no, wrong, because the diversity that was on screen was a diversity of character types. I made this point a couple of years ago with a similar article from Mary Sue. the characters in the MCU don't speak to the quote unquote male experience or the white experience because each of them is distinctly different from the other. There is no common element, and even if there are common elements, they're basically just common human elements and speak nowhere to the broader nature of the character. Like I said last time, Iron Man is a geeky engineer. Doctor Strange is a world-weary metaphysical scholar. Um, Thor is a, Nordic god from several thousand years ago.
Yeah,
Rocket
but these
Raccoon,
are the same people though who praised the Black Panther movie for its diversity when it was like 99% black people and 1% white people, and like, oh, that's so diverse. Like, no, it's
because
not.
They
oppression narrative.
and they all have they assume a priori that diversity is inherently something that must be done as a quota for everything. So even their premise, like, has their premise is flawed. I mean,
Well,
just from the get go.
that's not their starting premise though. Their starting premise is basically a take on Hegel's thesis antithesis thing, where everyone is either in the category of oppressed or the category of oppressor. Therefore, in order to balance the cosmic scales, as it were, to borrow a phrase from Thanos, they need to raise up everyone who was in the oppressed class and lower everyone who was unnecessarily in the oppressor class. That's their actual starting premise. Their starting premise is you're either in category A of oppressor or category B of oppressed, and therefore we need to. They don't actually want to equalize anything. What they want to do is invert the hierarchy so that everything is quote unquote made fair, i.e., the people who were the oppressed get their fair share, and the people who were the oppressors essentially get a taste of their own medicine, more or less.
No wonder these people love Bernie Sanders so much.
Oh my gosh.
Let's move on to the next topic before I throw up.
Okay.
Okay, I guess. Oh, next topic ain't all too better.
But
Yes.
we'll see if we can get any more material out of this one.
Yeah. Though I kind of doubt it.
Well, the only so just to, I guess, talk about that last one for another minute. The only good counter argument, or one that made me think anyway, for Steve Rogers' his final storyline and Endgame. I was reading it online. It was actually a counterpoint made by a veteran, and he said, "Well, everyone's complaining about why didn't Steve, come out of retirement to fight in Korea and Vietnam and Desert Storm?" It's like, well, when every other soldier retires, they don't re-enlist the second there's another war. The people who fought in Desert Storm didn't necessarily fight in the war on terror, where the people who fought in Korea didn't necessarily fight in Vietnam, and nobody blames them for not doing it. I mean, I know that Captain America obviously is a very different situation, but if he's retired, he's retired.
Topic.
Yeah, topic.
Yeah, right.
Next.
Sorry. All right. So, everyone. Yeah, title alone. Title alone, which is straight white man download version of Endgame with all the feminism and gay shit edited out.
Oh damn! Where can I find that version? Is that commercially available? I'd like to watch that.
I hear it's not that good. Like, I hear from people who actually were interested in it that apparently it's kind of disjointed in its editing. So I mean, I don't know.
But here's the thing: it was done basically for satirical purposes. It was done to basically make fun of the people who are obsessed with nothing but feminism and gay shit. So
I mean, there are stuff that they put in there that adds nothing to the movie, like that entire girl power sequence where every female character in the MCU teamed up at the same time.
Setup scene, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, oh, so the only thing, these characters have never met each other, they never talk to each other, they don't know each other. The only thing they have in common is a vagina, and so we're teaming them all up for this sequence.
Well, so Mark, have you seen it yet?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've seen Endgame?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you remember, I mean, honestly, that battle is amazing. I
It
mean,
is,
like in terms,
and it's just like a 2 minute, or it's not even 2 minutes. It's actually pretty quick, but it's
right?
just a small fraction of that big battle. I know, but it takes you out of
I
it.
know that's what I mean. It takes you out of it because so you basically have, I don't know, Gettysburg, right? Like
Yeah.
you have the Battle of Marvel Gettysburg, and you mean to tell me that all the females just happen to be in one like acre of land just
Right.
for this shot?
But this is the thing. This is the thing that ticks me off about that scene, though. Instead of actually servicing the characters you spent the entire previous movie in this series setting up, like Doctor Strange or um or Star-Lord or Gamora or any of those characters, you stop everything cold to do set up for the A-Force, basically. Here's something that wouldn't have taken that much time to actually put in the movie that I think would have served several characters and also made the movie better, and it would have taken maybe 5 extra minutes, or you could have just replaced the A4 scene with this. You remember the scene where Scarlet Witch is getting like her pound of flesh out of Thanos?
Mm-hmm.
I would have liked to have seen that go on longer, and then how I would have her sort of step down, because of course she has to step down in order for the rest of the movie to work, is have her get very close to actually killing Thanos. Then have Doctor Strange with his, um, pushing the tidal wave to the side thing, see what she's doing, and ask for project. And as we saw in Doctor Strange in the first Doctor Strange movie, when you ask for project, you can kind of slow down time if you want to. So what I would have is he goes over in his astral form, he puts a hand on her shoulder, and he says, "Wanda, this isn't your battle to win, enough." And uh, she looks over at him, very angrily, wondering who the fuck he is. And he shows her a vision, and you can do this without actually showing it to the audience. You can have it be like a flicker in her eye of how the day is actually supposed to go down. And then you have him say something to the effect of, "I'm someone who can help you master your powers, but we have to make it through today. This isn't your battle to win. You have to let this go." And then she slowly lets her guard down just enough for Thanos to, bitch slap her, kind of like he did in the original version. Strange goes back over to do his thing with the tidal wave, and it sets up a relationship between Strange and Wanda. It sets up her appearance in the next Doctor Strange movie, which is the most sensible thing to do with her. And it also explains why she suddenly went down like a bitch, even though she probably could have killed him, in all honesty.
I don't even remember how she went down in the movie.
Thanos just basically bitch slaps her because she gets too cocky.
Man, he like bitch slap a lot of people.
Yep.
He's like my
Without
hero.
the Infinity Gauntlet, mind you.
He's so cool.
And it also would have done something which I thought was sorely lacking. And yes, I'm biased because he's my favorite character, but for all of the setup that Doctor Strange was crucial to in Avengers Infinity War, he was in Endgame all of 5 minutes, and he didn't even get to do anything aside from opening portals and one thing with a tidal wave.
Well, I'll just say this about Endgame is that it's one of those movies where it could have been a lot. I didn't think it was a bad movie. It could have been a lot better though, but you can always tell when there was someone who said, like, there's some executive who said, "Oh, we need to put this in here to fill this quota or to meet this demand. So put in a scene where all the girls team up." And so you have these really obviously manufactured moments that take you out of the movie that you like, "Oh, an executive wanted this scene." Like, oh, okay, that sucks. And it takes you completely out of the experience, and the movie would be a lot better. Now, this edited version that started this topic is maybe there's a lot. Every single time a Hollywood movie comes out, someone does a fan edit of it where they think they can make a better version of it, and that's probably what this version was. It had maybe the potentially the wrong idea behind it, but I do think the
that
movie could be
is very
improved.
much in need of some fan edits, honestly.
Honestly, yes. I mean, I think not just to remove all the quote unquote gay shit and women or whatever, but I think a better edit of the movie would actually improve it to remove all the corporate mandated dumb stuff that actually was detrimental to the flow of the film.
Yeah,
It's like
I think a good 25 minutes could have been taken out, and it would have actually. So I kind of want to see a TV edit because it's like, as far as much as people don't like edits, I've always believed that it's the quality and not the quantity that
Quantity,
matters. Yeah.
exactly. I mean, there are edits of the Peter Jackson Hobbit movies that cut the movies down to like 90 minutes each, and they're a lot better. Obviously
but
because
the
yeah,
the edit I would like to see of the Hobbit movies is take the best bits from each of those three movies and make them one movie like they should have been all along. That's how you
exactly. I
do it.
mean, there's enough content in that trilogy for one movie. It's just they spread it out into a trilogy that's bloated.
And it can
pointless.
even be 3 or 4 hours if you absolutely need it to be, which, there was enough good stuff in those movies to justify it being that. But the thing that always rubbed me the wrong way about the Peter Jackson Hobbit movies is they tried to make it too much like Lord of the Rings, and
Yeah,
Lord of the
exactly.
Rings and the Hobbit are not the same kind of story. Lord of the Rings is like a Norse epic. It's very much designed after Norse epics, so that's what it is. Hobbit, though, was basically a fairy tale, an adventure story, casual, sort of very English, very classically English, um, adventure story for children, and that's what it should have been. That's one of the reasons why I've always related to Bilbo more than I related to Frodo, because Bilbo for most of the Hobbit is just like I want to go home and have my creature comforts and my refinements and my proper, you know, meals and all of these nice refinements of life. And Frodo's just like, I want to go on an adventure. And it's like, Frodo, knowing full well what's coming to you, you kind of deserve it for being this much of an IE jackass. Bilbo just wanted to have a nice life. You unnecessarily wanted an adventure. Well, you're getting one, but it's not going to go the way you want it
So,
to.
but going back to edits, the reason, like what Tim said, 25 minutes could have been cut out of Endgame, which was a 3-hour movie. I think it was like 3 hours and 1 minute technically, but I mean, more doesn't mean better. You look at, like, we were talking about Transformers the last night when we started the stream, and that movie is also almost 3 hours long. You know, all the Michael Bay Transformers movies are like 2.5 hours long when they could be a slimmer 90 minutes. They might actually be more entertaining. You cut out the crap you don't need, the characters you don't need, and you get a solid story. I mean, I was watching those Bill and Ted movies the other night, and each of them is only 90 minutes long, and they only have as much story as they need to have to tell that story. They don't have as much content as they need.
But
So right,
that's the thing. I actually like longer movies, but the key
not that they
feature of
don't need
longer
to be.
movies, the key feature of longer movies though is you have to use the time that you have, which means you have to make sure there's no dead air. The problem with Endgame that Infinity War honestly didn't have was there was so much dead air. In Infinity War, on the other hand, even with all the characters that were in it, even with all the aspects of the Marvel Universe that had to tie into it, not a single scene of that movie feels wasted because
Oh, no,
No,
every
I liked
time,
Infinity War a whole lot better.
me
yeah,
too. And I rewatched it.
yeah.
No, I rewatched it recently, actually the day before I saw Endgame, and I was just like, because I'm always everyone has this experience, especially as an adult. You like something, and you have that kind of high from what you've seen, but it takes some time to kind of analyze it and
Mhm.
kind of have it simmer in your mind, and then you revisit it, and then maybe it's not as good as you thought, or maybe it's better, maybe it's about the same. And I did that with Infinity War. I saw it last year, and I absolutely loved it. And then I thought to myself, there's some Marvel movies I saw where I came out feeling pretty good, and then it turns out that in an
They
analysis
weren't.
of it afterwards, they're only mediocre. And I rewatched it, and I was like, no, they made every second count. Like every single part of that movie is designed to advance a storyline, or at least advance the character
And
development. They
also
don't
every
really, even though they
character
do a lot of traveling,
got
they don't
well
waste
served.
anything.
Yeah, and every single character got well served in Infinity War as well. There's not really I'm sure there is a hierarchy of like who gets what screen time, but there's not really a hierarchy of any characters more important or less important than the other ones. Like even though Doctor Strange is regarded by everyone but me to be a less important character, he still gets a good 30 to 40% of um Avengers Infinity War, and every time he's on screen, he is the most badass character on screen. And that holds true in similar fashions with just about every other character. Even Star-Lord, who famously got the sort of shiv of having to be the one that fucks everything up, still got his, like, that made sense for his emotional arc. In Endgame, though, it was just like we had we had all this great setup in Infinity War, but we had no idea what to do with it. So basic bitch time travel and a generic sort of dingy, gray, depressed movie. That's the biggest failing, in my opinion, is those movies don't really flow into each other as much as they really, really should. It doesn't feel like two parts of one story. It feels like one really, really good half of a story, and then shit, somebody forgot to write the ending. So we have to haphazardly throw everything together.
Well, yeah, Avengers Endgame, it feels almost like the Back to the Future 3 of
Yeah.
the franchise, where
Yeah.
it just feels tonally off, where you can't even believe that it's the same creative team who made the previous movie. It's as if they had written themselves into a corner and used time travel as a Deus ex machina to write themselves out.
Yeah, they
It
put all
honestly,
the good they put all the good shit ahead of themselves in um Infinity War, and then they were like, shit, now we're out of all the good material. What do we do?
Yeah.
Just throw something together, they'll see it.
Yeah, Back to the Future, that Tim pointed out, is really like that. I mean, you after Back to the Future 2, where they go to the future, and you get all those great '80s style future moments, and they go back to the '50s again, and we get to see the first movie from a different angle. You try to top that with a cowboy movie, like, oh man, didn't think that one through.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, we've kind of cycled back around the same points the last time, so let's go to the next topic.
Yeah. I did want to say, if anyone has like a digital copy of Endgame, send it to me. Maybe I can try and do an edit of it.
topic.
Yeah. Topic is article. Dark Horse Comics writer John Arcudi. There are thieves, racists, and misogynists in positions of power in comics.
Yeah, the SJWs.
It,
I
it,
mean,
yeah, but you know that's not what he meant.
I know, but
Yeah,
we're spinning our wheels with these topics because they all
yeah,
go
it's just
back
the
to
same complaint
criticisms.
about
Yeah,
cis white males, cis white males. It's just the same thing over and
Well,
over
but
again. It's like watching The View.
this is what we do. We usually go through like a deeper analysis of these cringy articles to try and find the logic where there should be none.
Well, I
Basically,
mean,
it's
it's
like,
disappointing to hear this coming from Arcudi because I actually like his run on the Mask. I mean, he co-created the Mask, but yeah, I love those comics, those old Dark Horse comics, and they're all just hyper violent, really fun books. And then to see him now, where he's just complaining about, oh
so
no,
do you guys want to go through this one and see what his thoughts are, or rebut any of his points, or same thing? Do you want to move?
we might just end up preaching to the choir and just coming to the same conclusions that it's just
Well,
another.
but part of why we do this is kind of a catharsis of like getting all the rage of over this stupidity out.
All
I
right, well,
think
So
it's that I think it's that Mark and I we're like over it. I mean, we make our
Yeah.
own books. We don't even pay attention to the social justice stuff anymore. We figured that they have kind of claimed that sandbox on their for their own, and they can have it. Frankly, I mean, they can
Yeah.
spin their wheels as much as they want, but we're just not. We're just gonna dip out. I mean, it's like a lot of the YouTubers. They pretty much make a living off of doing these analyses of the SJWs, probably in a much more succinct fashion than I could. Maybe not as much as Mark could, but I don't know.
I mean, it's
I
like
just laugh at them.
watching.
They all
Yeah, it's
read
like
like Onion
watching
articles.
Anita Sarkeesian on Feminist Frequency every day, and like, yeah, I can pretty much predict down to the last word what she's gonna say and what her opinion and what her spin and everything is gonna be. At this point, it's just reruns.
Well, but my thing always is, yeah, I could write these people off, but then on some level I would be as bad as they are, because my stance, as I'm sure you guys are aware of at this point, is no matter how no matter how easy to write off something is, you should still give it the fair hearing
I know,
and
but what I mean is this.
debunk it
It's
as and when it needs to be debunked.
what I mean is this. So it's one thing to um, to keep an open mind and to actually look at what it is that they're saying. But it's another thing when you have 10 articles, but the premises of all of them is the same. And so you're basically just revisiting the same argument over and over again. And I'm like, I've done it already. Like,
Yeah, well, there's
there's
a point with a lot of these people where they don't really care about the argument. They just want the attention. They want the clicks and the ad revenue. So when you see a headline and it says something absolutely ridiculous like deal with it, white males. Uncle Scrooge has always been a queer icon. Mic drop, and then you're supposed to click on that and read their bullshit and get upset about it. And there's a point where like I don't really want to pay attention to these lunatics anymore. They're not doing it because they actually believe what they're saying, or maybe they do, but they're doing it to get clicks.
See, that's the thing. I always come at it, um, even if someone is being a willful contrarian, I come at it from the perspective of on some level they believe what they're saying, and as a
Oh,
result
I don't.
can be
It would be
refuted.
different if there. It would be different if there was, for example, like if someone put out an article tomorrow and it's like, why Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, why the original Captain America comics were a subtle um, confirmation of Marxism. I would actually read it because I just thought, okay, like you have my attention. It sounds like you're writing this in sincerity, like you've done your research. So, let's hear it. And I think that's very different than why Captain America represents the cis male patriarchy. It's like I have read a lot of articles, replace Captain America with someone else that are the points are very predictable to the point where I can only refute the same argument over and over where it's like, okay, come up with something new, and then then I can look at it with honest eyes and do it. But I just don't have the time in the day to go through every clickbait article and come up with philosophical responses to all of the nonsense that they spew out. And I think that's the problem, is that I think they would get more traffic if they're, well, never mind. Ironically, I think here I'm wrong. I was going to say, I think they would actually get more traffic from guys like us if it sounds like they actually put effort into their premise based on the headline than what we recognize as obvious clickbait,
Yeah, it's kind of somewhere in the middle. Like I guess I guess the difference is I care more about the argument than I do about the person making it. So I can address similar arguments on multiple different levels, because that's the other thing with articles with premises this stupid. There's so many different layers of attack you can go on it. So it's almost like a game for me sometimes, where I'll pick a different angle of attack and see if I can get to the core of the argument just as easily. And usually it works, but the point is sort of A, catharsis, because this level of stupidity makes me rage, and B, it's kind of a keeping your mind sharp. It's like I was saying, if you can find logic and sense in even the stupidest places, then you can find it anywhere. And
I think
it's sort of a
the difference though is that you
somewhat
actually
therapeutic exercise.
the difference though is that I think, one, you have a background in philosophy, and so this is almost like this is something that's right up your alley. Whereas Mark and I, we do this almost every day just because we work on college campuses. So when we're not doing this, we like to have our intellectual stimulation come from different modes of discourse. And so time is
Ah.
that issue where it's kind of like, for example, okay, I'll just tell you a story that happened today. So I was at this anime convention, and Mark, so in One Punch Man, there's a character. There's two sisters. They call them the Esper sisters. There's Tatsumaki and Hellish Blizzard. They're both
Okay. Yeah, I
they're
know
all
that.
they're both the green haired straight women. Okay, so I drew both of those characters, and a girl came up to me today, pointed at them, and told her friend, "Oh my gosh, that's so awesome! I would totally suck his dick." And she pointed at him, and so like the friend like shooed her away and was like, "Oh my gosh, you shouldn't talk about that because I know that it's in your fanfic, but it can sound weird to other people." And she's like, "But you agree, right?" It's like, I totally agree. And so my wife was like, "What was that?" And so I had to tell her, I was like, in anime, for some reason, which is another topic on its own, there is a whole lot of this almost worshipping of shipping, and this perversion of the intent of the author or creator to suit the kind of fantasies of the people who do it. So I was like,
Well,
even at a convention, I'm having to kind of mentally jump through like these hoops to
I had
kind
to
of
get.
rationalize to
Yeah.
myself like,
Well,
why
remember
is
that
it?
that show we did last year where you had I think it was when you had your shiny chariot print out, and
Yeah,
that one
yeah.
girl came by, that one otaku girl came by and said, "Oh my gosh, I love Little Witch Academia. I really love the subplot about the lesbian relationship that Shiny Chariot had with Croy." And we're like, "Did we watch the same show? I don't recall that at all being in there." Yeah, it's just people projecting their fetishes, especially they're called shippers, people who take
Yeah.
character A, character B,
People
and
who
pair them
desire
together.
relationships in
Yeah, but they
media.
almost get religious. They get fanatical about it, and
Uh,
you
I,
watch them and like these people are nuts.
yeah, I could tell you a story about like this one like kind of fandom who was basically populated by shippers, kind of ruined the show.
Go
Which,
ahead.
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'm not okay. So the show itself, I don't watch anymore just on the fact that it sucks now. Writing sucks. It was basically like trying to be like I'm not sure if you've heard of it. Ruby, RWBY, if that sounds familiar at all.
Yeah, it's an
I've heard
anime.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, I like the first couple seasons. It's pretty good. Uh, okay, fine. And I've talked about it a little bit on previous podcasts. I'm sure Brown can back me up on that.
Mhm.
But essentially, uh, the show started out well by having interesting concepts and just being a basic kind of I don't know what the actual term is, but an anime that is set in like this kind of fantastical world that's in a school, right?
Mhm.
And I don't know when it started. Probably a little after, like midway through season 2, I believe, is when like the shipping really started to go kind of overboard with like this one episode that had two characters that were being shipped by the fans a lot. And then after season 3, I think it really started getting more and more intense because I'm thinking a lot of the shippers were like from Tumblr, which I'm sure is that where most of the shippers come from. And essentially, in one of the, I think it is season 6 right now, uh, they basically rewrite these two characters to fall in love because of how fanatical the that portion of the fandom was talking about, like on Twitter or social media or whatever, to the creators and stuff. And it just made the show suck because they were trying to appease that particular group of fans. I just
And-
stopped watching after that.
And see, this is the thing about that, and this is what really annoys me is I'm actually fairly supportive of the concept of death of the author because in my opinion, there's plenty of examples in the past where the person who understood the material the best was not actually the author. Perfect example is Thomas Harris when he was actually the writer of Hannibal Rising. That movie sucked horribly because Thomas Harris didn't actually understand why Hannibal Lecter is a popular and likable character, or why that character has a fan base. So he was too much in his own head and why he created the character as opposed to thinking about why people like it. Another great example is the guy who wrote the book that Who Framed Roger Rabbit was based on
Oh
actually
yeah.
liked actually ended up liking the film version of Who Framed Roger Rabbit better than his book version. So he actually wrote a sequel where he sort of retconned the movie's sort of logic back into the story. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that also happened with, I want to say it was Ray Bradbury who saw the 60s adaptation of Fahrenheit 451 and liked their version of the relationship between Montag and Clarice better, so he kind of retconned that as well. And in those cases, it's a clear delineation of okay, this person might have created it, but that doesn't mean they necessarily have the best understanding of this character. The issue I have, of course, is, and I probably sound like a broken record, but the issue I have, of course, is the thing that makes the death of the author legitimate, at least in my mind, is sometimes if you have a fan who, you know, knows all the ins and outs of this material better than the author does, then they have a rational argument for why their changes are superior. But the key part is, as usual, the rational argument. If you just go, I like this because my romance and my feels, that's not that at that point, no, the author does know better than you. Fuck off.
Well,
Um,
it's the George Lucas Star Wars special edition scenario, isn't it? Where he thought the changes he was making to the original Star Wars movies were legitimate improvements, and he's the creator of those movies. He's the creator of those characters, so you would think he would know best.
and of
But you
course
can go back and
we all can
yeah,
know in sort of retrospect that the thing that made the original Star Wars trilogy great was actually the people who were willing to tell George Lucas to cool it and to knock it off when he
yeah. But I
needed
mean
to
that's
knock
just
it off.
that's the most obvious, though. I think the most relatable example to people out there listening to the stream, that the creator doesn't always, at least when they go back to their creation, know the best things about it or why it was popular. Like, I mean, adding Luke screaming after he jumps down the chasm in Cloud City in the special edition. Like, not just was that a bad effect because he recycled a scream, it made no sense narratively because he willingly jumped down that chasm. So,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that kind of thing, you can make
There
that
didn't need
argument.
to be the
Like
screaming.
George, you shouldn't have put that scream in there because it doesn't make sense in the context of the scene. And that's a case where George Lucas did not know best for what he was doing objectively. But
he was too much in his own head,
like he
and
was more
he
concerned
didn't
about
actually look at he didn't
it's
actually look at what was compelling about his own story.
exactly. So yeah, there is an argument to be made that just because someone created a work and legally owns it, they don't always necessarily know the best for those characters. And I mean that sounds like
And
an
I don't want it to
entitlement,
sound like
and
I'm dumping on creatives because for
yeah.
one thing, you guys are two creatives, and I certainly
Yeah,
wouldn't
no, but
want to
I'm
dump.
just trying to say that I understand what you're coming from, and I mean it is a case where yeah, there are times when creators do make legitimately bad decisions with their work. I mean that happens all the time, and which the outside observers can watch those changes happen in real time and say, oh, that was a bad choice. So yeah, no, it
I
happens.
mean, do we even need to look into SJW Marvel for a litany of examples of just because you got put on this book does not mean you know shit
Yeah,
about this character.
Well, we had Mark and I have a personal example. We've had several bidders for the Black Ops franchise, and one of them wanted it was a joke that we made, and they thought we were serious. And it was like, well, what improvements would you make? And it's like, I don't know. Like, you want to give him a skateboard and sunglasses and have a rap song? Oh my gosh, that's the best idea ever. And that's what I told Mark. I
yeah.
was like, we're never selling this franchise to anyone. Like, we will get editors to look at it. We will let people with very strict opinions and very blunt approaches look at it, but we will never sell it to anyone, just because this is one of those examples where we're fairly confident that we know the character better than anyone that we could hand it off to. And
Right.
so I think the argument could always be made both ways, and I think the fair compromise is yes, I think that the author should by inherent right have primary access to the character, but it behooves him to always have someone else look at it and to take those opinions and that input to heart. And if someone like George Lucas had done like honest focus studies, I think a lot of this stuff could have been avoided. But I think he was just the type of person who was like, I know what's best, and I am going to put this out here the way I want it to. And it's like that's fine, but you are getting yourself
I
in the
don't
foot.
support a hard and fast death of the author, like always, the author doesn't matter, because that's just stupid. What I do think is that it kind of relates to something I mentioned while we were talking post stream last night. Was I really despise the idea of unearned authority, just on general principle, and I always fall back on what logically makes sense. So in my opinion, the sort of control of a character or an IP should kind of go to whoever can make the best case for their particular perspective. And in the case of shippers, none of them get that far, because a lot of those people are Tumblrites who think that logic is a harmful social construct, for one thing, and for another thing, really do supersede their feelings over literally everything else in the universe. And that's not how you offer constructive criticism. Criticism should always be based on at least some form of logic. It doesn't have to be 100% literal, but an attempt to and this goes back to one of my broader points, which is you shouldn't just be able to go, I feel this way because I feel this way. You should at least have some kind of external, I feel this way because, and then explain why you feel this way. Like, feelings don't just come out of nowhere. They are caused by things, and therefore they should be held to some kind of standard of causality.
Yep. So I'm probably going to have to dip at 9:30. So did you have another topic you want to go on to?
Well, since you mentioned Star Wars, maybe we should skip ahead to the
I got it. The wonderful, and then air quotes there, J.J. Abrams said, J.J. Abrams on Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, fuck it, I'm going to do the thing that feels right. Now, obviously, that can be interpreted in several different ways.
Yeah, well, I mean, J.J. Abrams' Star Wars movie, the Force Awakens, and that was so. Tim was talking earlier about how you go to see a movie, you come out, and maybe you really love it, maybe really hate it, but then you think about it for a while, you watch it again, and you come up with another. Your opinion changes after you've analyzed it more. Now, Force Awakens was a movie when I walked out of it, I loved it, and I was on cloud nine. But then I sat down and I thought about it, like, well, why did I love that movie? Oh, because it had everything from the original Star Wars in it that I liked, and it reminded me of a better movie that I enjoyed. And then I watched it a second time and realized that it was just a straight up remake of a movie I liked. And I don't really have a whole lot of respect for The Force Awakens because it just seems rather gutless.
Well, the sort of the irony of J.J. Abrams' statement there is I've read the article itself, and I can tell you that what he means by what feels right is basically everything that isn't standard Star Wars.
Oh, so the subversion of expectations.
He's pulling a softer, more disingenuous version of the Rian Johnson argument, which I respect Rian Johnson for at least coming out and admitting what he wants, as opposed to sort of couching it in flowery, abstract language. But in J.J. Abrams' case, it's another variation of that argument of, well, if something is normal, that means it should, by definition, be destroyed, because norms don't exist for reasons, don't you know?
Well, it's funny. I mean, The Force Awakens was J.J. Abrams giving us a Star Wars movie that was so familiar and so safe that it had no original ideas in it whatsoever. And then The Last Jedi went so far in the opposite direction, where it tried to subvert all your expectations and give you the exact opposite of everything.
Where it didn't have any deference for anything.
Yeah, so it ended up being a movie made for absolutely no one. And so there's the possibility that Episode 9 will be the one that finds a compromise between those two and
Yeah.
makes a movie people might enjoy. I'm not sure if I'm even going to see it. Honestly, I'm kind of so sick of Star Wars at this juncture, but they've kind of blown it.
It's funny because this is a perfect example of a observation that I made a couple weeks ago, which is the only people that genuinely care about norms are two kinds of people. There's one kind of person who is a traditionalist who thinks that a norm justifies itself simply by virtue of being a norm, i.e., we should always do what's normal, we should always do what's traditional because it's traditional and it always has been the case. And then there's the other half of there's the other half of the argument, or the other side of the argument that goes, no norm should ever be thought to be reasonable or have any validity to it. All norms need to be deconstructed because norms are just harmful social constructs and illusions. And both of these casts of people are wrong because, of course, the traditionalist is wrong because just because something is normal doesn't mean it justifies itself, and it doesn't mean that it necessarily comes from a valid place. But the other side of the argument is also wrong because just because something is not normal or just because something is normal doesn't mean it doesn't come from a valid place. My solution is to find the middle ground, which is your norm is allowed to exist insofar as it has merit to it. If it can't be demonstrated to have merit, away with it. If it can be demonstrated to have merit, then we'll keep it until we can find an improvement. And that's the other thing about kind of traditionalism that bugs me, because like traditionalism kind of excludes the possibility of anything ever improving. One great example is traditionalists always crapped all over comic books because they were kid stuff, and therefore you needed to put away all your childish things, was always the argument. And what exactly did that lead to? Quite evidently, it led to a bunch of people suppressing the parts of themselves that made their lives worth living. And as a result, at least a correlative one, we got a bunch of people going through what are called midlife crises. The psychological impetus behind a midlife crisis is if you repress, the part of you that wants more out of life, or the part of you that likes things, you're going to eventually snap and overindulge in those things. Whereas, fortunately, we seem to have come to a point in our culture where we've come to the conclusion of you don't have to get rid of the things that you liked as a child because you might still have reason for liking them. The point is to not catch yourself in a developmental sinkhole, basically. The point is to, analyze what you like with a more adult, quote unquote, lens if you're going to keep it. And I think that's a much more constructive sort of middle ground between those two extremes. No, traditions don't justify themselves inherently, and no, not all norms are entirely socially constructed illusions. Norms, just like anything else, should be justifiable with merit and reasoning, ideally.
This is why I keep him around. He talks so I don't have to.
Oh, there you go.
I hope
don't think
that's
there's
not the
anything
only
left to.
reason, but
No,
I don't think there's
there are
anything.
other reasons. That's one of the main ones.
I don't think there's anything else to add to that, really. Mark, do you have anything else?
No, I kind of phased out there for a second. Yeah, pretty much.
I'm sorry.
I
do that a lot. I ramble too much. And
yeah,
then
no, I think
people...
the Star Wars Last Jedi is one of those topics that's everyone. There's nothing new to say about it anymore. I certainly can't think of anything new to say. I think it's kind of an understood between every audience member that the movie was not good. No one liked it. Solo, Solo was trending. Yeah, well, only the contrarians who feel an agenda-driven reason to say they liked it.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody objectively watched that movie and came out of it saying like, "Wow, that was fantastic."
The thing that annoyed me the most about it, though, was usually, at the very least, these people who are obsessed with deconstruction are subtle about it, and they slowly sort of pick at the abstract stuff. In Last Jedi, it's literally just text. It's not even subtext anymore. It's just text. The past should burn down, say both the Sith and the Jedi, and it's the one thing that apparently both sides of the Force can agree on, is burn everything that you once loved to the ground because it never had any validity.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. So there's Solo was trending like 2 days ago. People saying we want a sequel to Solo. And like that was the most manufactured like publicity social media stunt I'd ever seen. There's no one in
Yeah,
the world
never.
who's demanding a sequel to Solo. This was just something Disney cooked up to try and make it look like people gave a shit about that movie.
And the,
I
the
don't
funny
think you
thing is
could
that
Disney it.
Disney is not incapable of doing something good. I mean, a lot of people overlook Rogue One, which is a
I
very
like that
good
one. Yeah.
movie.
One of the best Star Wars movies, full stop. I think Rogue One.
I love that movie completely.
Yeah,
And that was also a movie where they made a lot of changes to it between the time the trailer came out and the time the movie came out. They made a lot of changes to that movie that apparently improved it. So
and
it
this
was a
is
case where it was kind of like the exception that proves the rule, maybe.
yeah.
But yeah,
But this is something interesting that I noticed, and we can discuss if you guys want to. Um, when you get right down to it, each Star Wars trilogy only has one good movie each.
Mm,
yeah.
The original trilogy has Empire. The prequel trilogy has Revenge of the Sith, and the new trilogy has Rogue One.
but the
As much
Rogue One's not
as
part of the
much
new
as
trilogy.
Yeah,
as
it's
much
a
as people,
spin-off. Yeah,
well,
it's
yeah, but as much as people love the original trilogy, Star Wars, for its own merits, doesn't really hold up all that well,
I think
and
that's
I
I
would
neither does
think
disagree
that's
Return of
with
the
up
that.
Jedi.
for I think that's up for debate. I mean,
Yeah,
like personally, my favorite movie isn't even Empire; it's Return of the Jedi,
yeah,
and that's the
mine
one that
too.
people revile.
I mean, I can understand that objectively, Empire Strikes Back is the better movie, but subjectively, personally, I prefer Return of the Jedi. I just get far more entertainment and far more enjoy out of it. Yeah,
I'm just curious why.
Return of the
If you
Jedi.
guys feel like explaining, yeah,
Oh
because
yeah, no.
I've never heard anyone say that Return was better than Empire. Even
Well,
the people that like Return are just like, yeah, but it was
like I
better.
just
Hey,
said,
let Mark talk.
yeah. Okay, so like I just said, objectively, I understand that Empire Strikes Back is the better movie, but personally, the one that I enjoy watching more is Return of the Jedi. I have more fun with it. I enjoy all the special effects in it more. I enjoy the character work. I just like that movie a lot better. I mean, it's one of those things where you don't necessarily have to justify a subjective pleasure. I mean, I enjoy Critters. I don't have to. I don't have to, explain that one to anybody. I'm not going to argue, till I'm blue in the face that Critters is a good movie, but it's a movie I enjoy. Now, I will argue. I won't deny it, or I won't argue with anybody who says that Empire is a better piece of filmmaking than Return of the Jedi. It certainly is, but I'd rather watch Return of the Jedi just going by what I like.
Is there anything you thought Empire was missing that Return had that makes you like it better? Just out of curiosity.
Out of what was missing, well, that see Empire is a good movie. I enjoy it. I don't really think Empire was missing anything necessarily. I think it was a very trim movie. It had everything it needed. I wouldn't change anything about it. That's why I still watch bootlegs of the laser discs of the old movies, because I don't think they need anything to be added or taken away from them. But Return of the Jedi has the first half hour is what I love most about that movie. I love everything at Jabba's palace. I love all the monsters. I love all the creatures, and it's a very visceral enjoyment. Uh, Obviously, maybe Empire Strikes Back. I'd watch that one more if it had more guys in monster suits in it. But I don't think it needed it, not for its story.
I think if I had to sort of sum up your point here, it would be Return has more heart, whereas Empire is more technically proficient.
I
If
I don't
it,
even.
it,
I mean, Mark
I
and I
wouldn't
have the
even.
same
Yeah.
taste as far as that's concerned, but for me, it's the same. It's nothing to do with heart. I feel like because Return of the Jedi, I feel like it gives you kind of the best buffet that you could imagine as far as what you want in a Star Wars movie, like cool creatures. You have three distinct lands, so you have like Tatooine, you have Endor, and you have the metallic Death Star. You have like some of the best action scenes are in Return of the Jedi. I personally like the Ewoks, and I'm saying that not because like I'm trying to justify or rationalize my love of them. Actually, as a kid, I always liked the Ewoks. And then I was
well, I
actually
mean,
kind of
they're
shocked
cute,
later on in life to
so
find out that people
cuteness
hated
sells a lot
them.
of things.
And so so I just feel like just seeing the trilogy as a child and as an adult, I feel like Return of the Jedi, minute by minute, it doesn't waste my time, and I feel like it actually just gives me what I want. Whereas in Empire Strikes Back, I mean, I don't think that this is a detriment to it, but it is definitely something that was brought up in The Last Jedi, and I thought that it's funny because they actually do the same thing in Empire, which is there's a whole lull where Han and Leia and Chewie are in the Millennium Falcon and they're just kind of stuck, where there's not really anything happening, and the only thing that makes it fascinating is that it's interspersed with the training sequence on Dagobah. So it's like, meanwhile on Dagobah, and that's where all the exciting stuff is happening. It's like, meanwhile in the Millennium Falcon, Han Solo accidentally
Well,
copped a
I
feel.
I didn't have that problem with Empire because I found the Dagobah scenes more compelling and more interesting than most of what Han and the rest were doing the whole time. So every time I
Yeah.
actually had almost the exact opposite problem. I was like, why are you making me watch Han and Leia and them do things? I want to be
No, that's what I
in
that's what
Dagobah
I
with
mean.
Yoda.
No, that's what I was saying. I was like, I don't want to watch Han and Leia and Chewie stuck in some rock. I want to go back to this training sequence in Dagobah, and I think that's one reason why I like Return of the Jedi is even in my mind right now, I can replay that whole movie because like, sweet, droid show up at Jabba's palace. Man, Jabba the Hutt, he's cool. Oh man, oh that slave dancer girl got eaten. Oh man, Luke Skywalker, he's a knight now. Whoa, he fights that big monster. Whoa, on this barge. Whoa, there's these like teddy bears on this
Yeah,
planet.
Return of the
What? Darth
Jedi is
Vader's
just it's a more minute to minute entertaining movie. It's more exciting. I mean, obviously I think just I saw it as a kid, and if I had to choose as a kid which one to watch, I would always choose Jedi because I just found it far more exciting. And it's the same thing with the Indiana Jones trilogy. I would actually much rather watch Temple of Doom than Last Crusade, honestly. Last Crusade's a better movie than Temple of Doom. It's far better acting. It doesn't have Steven
Okay.
Spielberg's wife in it, but
So
I got much more entertainment value from Temple of Doom. And
so it's more about kind of getting the visceral bang for your buck, as it were.
yeah, but it also has to have has substance to it, and it has to be a good movie in its own right. It's not like a Michael Bay movie where that's bang for your buck, but it's obnoxious, it's bloated, and the
Bang in the
characters are
form of a
terrible.
thousand
Yeah, it's more
explosions
like
that
a
mean
bang to
nothing.
your skull. Yeah, no, I mean, again, I'm not going to say that Temple of Doom is a better movie than Last Crusade is, but I would much rather watch that. We were talking about Back to the Future at the very start of the stream. I'd much rather watch Back to the Future 2 than Back to the Future 3, and it has nothing to do with so much with the narrative. But Back to the Future 2 is just a lot more fun to watch than Cowboys and
I
Indians in
was
the Old
just
West.
curious because, as always, I'm more interested in the things that lead into the premise than I am necessarily the
Yeah.
premise. So, and also it's something I've genuinely not heard before. Most people, even the ones that like Empire, are still like, yeah, but I like
Yeah, well, I think most people
Empire better.
you have to ask them like, what do you think is the best movie and what is your favorite movie, and those aren't always going to be the same answer. People can say like, "What do you think is the greatest movie of all time?" And, people are going to feel obligated to say The Godfather, or Gone with the Wind, or Citizen Kane. These ones that are objectively understood to be the greatest movies of all time. Or what's your favorite movie of all time? And that's a very different answer. I'm going to say Ghostbusters. I don't think Ghostbusters is the greatest movie
Well,
ever made,
what do you mean?
technically, but it's
2016 or the original?
say what?
2016 or original?
Oh dear God, I mean the original.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure.
Yeah, it was like there was something that my friend said. There was a quote that a friend of mine said that I told Mark, and it was he's a really bright man who graduated from UCLA, and he's a copyright lawyer. But he once told us, he said, "Not everything in life is an intelligence test," which means that there, at some visceral level, there is a point where you just, I don't know, you just feel a big emotional connection to something, and typically that something it still has objectively good points to it, but you've just crossed that threshold where you just go against the grain, and
that's the thing. I mentioned this last night when we were talking. The reason why I find emotions to be valid in the first place is kind of due to like evolutionary psychology. So even when I just feel something, I want my first two ports of call are, okay, what am I actually feeling? How would I describe this feeling that I'm feeling? And number two is, why am I feeling this? And the third thing, obviously, is this a valid thing to be feeling right now, or is this a fault on my part? So even with emotions, I'm just like, emotions are data and they are valid data, but they're still data.
Well, it's almost 9:30, so I'm probably gonna have to dip out now. I gotta actually talk to Eric. Tim knows Eric. Eric likes X-Men: The Last Stand, and he just likes it because he likes it. But he's a guy I'm working with on another book, so I'm gonna have to get in touch with him in a minute.
Alrighty.
But yeah, it's
Yeah.
been good to
See
be
you,
on your
Mark.
stream, man.
And
Yep.
well, no, same here because I have to unpack everything from the car.
Oh
I
shit!
just,
Yeah, you
I
gotta
just came
okay,
back from that
darn.
convention.
Well, yeah, I guess then we can kind of go back through some of the topics we lampshaded earlier and sort of do our deeper analysis like we always do.
Cool.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
Yeah, cool, man. Yep. You guys have a good time.
Yeah.
It was
absolutely.
yeah, it was nice having you guys on, and if you ever want to be on again, just let me know. We
Sure
do
thing.
this every
Thanks.
Sunday, so pretty much whenever is
Okay.
fine.
Cool.
Yeah, cool, man.
Have a good
All
one.
right, you guys have a good one. Have a
Yeah.
happy Memorial Day.
Yeah. Good night.
Cheers.
Bye.
Peace.
And then there were two.
Well, I'm going to have to open. I closed out of them because I thought we were just going to call it a night when they left. I will.
Well, but it's still a little bit early, and we still have an audience that we have to give bang for their buck.
Yeah. All right. So,
I apologize for that. I thought they were gonna be more into the cringe, but I guess
everyone has their
I can
limits.
I can see where they're coming from, but it is somewhat disappointing. I sort of felt like an ass for because it seemed like it was gonna mesh well with everybody, and then it kind of resulted in nobody being entirely satisfied. But we still have the opportunity to go back through and do our thing. So, shall we then?
You're gonna have to give me a minute. Like I said,
Well,
I closed out of
can
them. So
we can look through chat, or I'll look through chat and see what people are saying.
I've been watching it the whole time. It's just I was kind of afraid to talk.
Yeah, I thought you did good, dude. There's no reason to worry about. Like I told you, they're generally pretty laid back dudes, so I don't think you were gonna massively embarrass yourself or anything. Ah, Jesus. Sound mute because fuck you.
Okay. Got the first three open. Yeah.
Okay, how's it going, chat?
Eric's been here for he got here around, I believe.
Yes, and also Frank FG, who I do not know and have not seen before, so
Nor have I. But I think he and Eric are either friends or maybe related due to what they were saying.
okay. So you've got the things.
Yes, I do.
Okay, good.
I don't know, like something weird with my mouse. Okay. And I mean, mouse is in like the device, not like I have a pet mouse or anything.
Lol.
Okay.
That reminds me of the movie Stuart Little of Vanna. I saw the Nostalgia Critic reviewed it a while back, and it made me feel very nostalgic because that's one of the first movies I ever remember watching. But anyway, let's actually examine
Eric,
the stupid.
I don't think it's not that we're ignoring you. I just didn't. I couldn't find a way to implement you guys into the conversation. We are not discussing Aladdin, Frank. Mostly
Well,
because
we
I haven't
can.
seen it.
Shit. It
Well, I
was.
haven't
It was.
seen it, so I can't really.
Okay.
talk
Well,
about it.
we'll wait until either you've seen it or we have
Not
viewers
interested in
say.
seeing it. I guess I should have said.
Yeah. So yeah, I saw it. I did not find it satisfying at all, and I generally kind of like the live action remakes. So that should tell you
Okay.
something. I did a stream with Englentine about it, so there is that. If
Yeah,
you
I
guys
think I
want to see it.
Okay. So, title. We read title. Avengers Endgame may be the straightest Marvel movie to date. An impressive feat. Oh wait, I already read that. Huh? No, wait, no.
I don't think you did. We didn't actually get into the text of the article because they kept wanting to lampshade.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Avengers Endgame may be the straightest Marvel movie to date. An impressive feat considering the amount of attention paid to its blink and you'll miss it gay cameo.
Which it had, despite other movies not having, so you are objectively incorrect about this by your own metric.
Yeah,
But
2 weeks ago we did the review for Endgame, right?
Yeah.
2 weeks. Yeah. A lot of the point, like just from that alone, we did have a conversation about it in that podcast. A lot of the stuff we said in the podcast can probably be used to refute a lot of this stuff. Maybe.
mhm.
Okay. It's not exactly news that the MCU is dominated by straight. I did read that.
Yeah, because that was the one part you picked out to spur the conversation along.
Yeah.
And yeah, I already said my piece. It doesn't. Endgame doesn't speak to anything particular about the straight experience or the male experience or the white male experience or any of that because each individual character is so vastly different that even the broad stroke universals you could point out don't really speak directly to the experience or the perspective of
Well,
white straight men
yeah, I didn't read the last part of that article.
or paragraph. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, paragraph. In the paragraph. Basically, this film's concept of a happy ending is so rooted in heteronormativity that it ruined the final act for several key characters.
Okay. Do they actually have an argument or is it just an assertion?
I'm pretty sure assertion, but there's no like. Well, I'm sure they'll go into it later, but just on that alone, there's nothing really to say because there's no. From what I can remember, the movie there. I mean, yeah, there are some endings to characters that don't make any sense, but
There are quite a few characters whose endings don't really make much sense, and there are quite a few characters that just straight up aren't served, despite featuring very largely in the previous movie. But
yeah, that's why I feel like they should have done like the three-parter.
the fundamental thing of it though is that the only two characters that really got the quote unquote straight happy ending, if you want to call it that, which I wouldn't under normal
Yeah,
circumstances, but for the sake of the argument, are Tony and Steve. And that's because we've been rooting for. It has nothing to do with the straight experience. It has everything to do with the fact that their relationships with these people have been integral to their characters for the entirety of the run in the MCU. And if and just for the sake of the argument,
what?
if
They
it if
don't.
yeah,
You're kind of roboting and glitching out.
oh darn. Here, did that fix it?
Yes, it did.
Okay, that was just me getting a little bit too far away from the phone, I think. But the point is, um, it only really applied to Tony and Steve. And it has nothing to do with the fact that they're a straight romance. It has everything to do with the fact that their relationship with those characters were integral um to their character motivations overall. For example, we've known Pepper and Tony were going to get together or had a romantic chemistry since the first Iron Man. And that would be still the case if Pepper Potts had been Peter Potts, i.e., if we gender swapped Pepper and made her a male character, and he had that much history with Tony, then we would still be as invested in Tony getting his romantic happy ending. Same thing with if Peggy had been Pete or something. It probably still would have been the case. And yes, I suppose.
Her real name is Margaret, so like Martin or something.
Yeah, if Margaret had been Marvin, it still would be the case that we would still be rooting for them. But the only counter argument you can make really with Cap is there was a lot of gay coding with Steve and Bucky. A lot of people wanted Stucky to be a thing, and
is it Stucky or is it Eve or something like that?
it's Stucky is the official like ship name, and yes, there is one of those because fuck you.
The fact that I know that off the top of my head makes me disappointed in myself.
Well, but at least you can make sense of the stupid, and being able to make sense of the stupid is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can find logic and sense in the middle of the abyss, then at the very least you can find it anywhere.
You know what's weird? I actually do kind of shipping. It's more of like if I think these two characters like on screen have like this kind of chemistry. Yeah, I'll ship them just based on actual evidence that they could work together.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to shipping. I've done it before, and I've read a lot of.
Or something.
Yeah, see. This is the thing. Okay, so the main ship for Strange is Clea. That's the niece of Dormammu that he has an on-again, off-again relationship with. But in all honesty, Strange is one of those characters that I would prefer didn't have any romantic attachments at all, because he's a monk and a scholar and a sorcerer. And one of the key features of like Eastern mysticism is a foregoing of worldly attachment.
Huh.
So insofar as it's kind of crucial to his Eastern influenced mysticism that he has, it makes more sense for Strange to be one of those few characters that entirely abstain from romantic relationships. And what?
Don't you there?
Yeah.
Okay, then sound like you cut out there for a sec.
No, I didn't know how to really end that sentence, so I just stopped talking.
Okay. Well, before we move on, a couple things came in. Earlier, a couple minutes ago, Dalton, not Dalton, Eric Green, said there is something fundamentally wrong with people who endlessly obsess over the sexual identities of fictional characters.
Well, I would say there's something kind of endlessly wrong with doing that regardless of whether or not they're fictional. Because it's basically the equivalent of everyone becoming the Jewish mother archetype of when are you getting married? When are you having children? When am I gonna have grandchildren? It's basically everyone doing that.
Frank FG said, I only care about the character's political views, which I'm sure he doesn't actually mean. Or, well, I'm not entirely sure about. I don't know what he means by that.
I think he was being sarcastic of something that, like, an SJW would say of, I only care about the character's political views because they're just a means to an end.
Yeah. Okay, so X Ella. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but Sis says the other issue not covered. What happens when all those people return? Just as many lives destroyed, how many dead husbands and wives come back? So what happens there? That is, we did cover. We asked that question.
The whole logistical aspect of the snapping really does raise a lot of questions. And the thing that annoyed me the most though was he snapped everyone back to the way they would have been before the snap, which means that 5 years have now passed, and half of the planet is 5 years younger than they should be, and the other half is 5 years older. And that also means that Doctor Strange was zoomed ahead 5 years, but didn't actually have a chance to do 5 years of studying, which means that him eventually becoming Sorcerer Supreme is gonna now take longer, because as of yet he is not the Sorcerer Supreme in the MCU.
Eric Breen says Doctor Strange plays children's birthday parties and hits on the MILFs.
Eric, why must you make me try to kill you every single stream?
Because you're kind of easy. You're easily provoked.
The plotting, Eric, you're making me do the plotting again. And one of these times, I'm going to get through with a session of plotting and actually find the conclusion of my plotting.
How do you plot?
And you will not like the conclusion of my plots, Eric. They all involve you being bloody on the floor, extruded with no blood left in you, like fucking Sebastian Rand in that one episode of Elementary.
That got dark. Alright, so moving on. Alright, so for this is actually interesting. Frank FG says, imagine waking up to find out the younger brother you used to bully is now bigger than you. I mean, yeah. Also, it also brings up the thing of, like, you know, if grandparents or stuff like that, you know, people could have died.
Also, somehow Ned is still in high school, despite the fact that it's been 5 years, and
I don't think. Well, it could have been that he was also snapped too.
That's true, I guess. But that would have to be true with basically every supporting character in the Spider-Man mythos too, then, because we see Spidey and Flash Thompson, and we see MJ and all of his like school, all of his like schoolmates in Far From Home, and they're all the same age they would have been if the 5 years didn't happen. So it's like, guys, some of these characters should be older than they are. Did no one think that's true?
That's actually pretty funny, considering that they actually are older than what they portray on screen.
That's true.
Yeah. Okay, so for most of Avengers Endgame's conclusion was as much about embracing a conventional nuclear family as it was about defeating Thanos. What the fuck is wrong with you, you stupid motherfucker? It's like my knee-jerk reaction before we get into actual meat and potatoes of that.
When exactly did that happen? Because, as you recall, the only person with a substantive family is Tony and Pepper and the daughter. And Tony dies at the end of the movie, so that there goes that nuclear family. Pepper is now a single mom.
Wait, isn't it also nuclear family? Doesn't that mean there also is a son?
It can be either way. It's basically parents and child is sort of the broadest definition of the word. But again, this results from this person being like, ew, a norm. Norms should always be deconstructed because they're harmful illusions. And personally, I don't particularly like the nuclear family. I find it to be somewhat restrictive. So this is a point we can kind of agree on. But there was no nuclear family pandering in Endgame. Like I said, the 5 minutes that it's actually on screen are somewhat shortcutted by the fact that, again, Pepper is now a single mom because Tony is dead. The entire process of the movie leads to the exact opposite of your conclusion, you stupid fuck. If
And just,
anything, it's a sign of how the nuclear family needs to be destroyed in order to save the universe. If you insist on channeling everything through this ideological lens of yours, you should at least look at both sides of it and realize that if you want to see everything through this lens of yours, you could just as easily read a sympathetic reading from it. Because again, the one nuclear family there is in the MCU at this point is dead. And as far as we know, Tony, or not Tony, but Steve and Peggy don't actually have any kids because the one offspring we see of the sort of Rogers Carter bloodline there uh is Steve's niece. So it's very possible that
oh dear God, I just remembered Civil War.
yeah, so that yeah, the at the very least you could make the argument that Tony or yeah, Steve and Peggy don't actually have any kids, so that also sort of kicks your nuclear family hypothesis down a bit because if they don't have children, they can't be a nuclear family. They're just a married couple.
That wasn't what I was referring to. I'm talking about like Civil War, that scene.
The kiss, yeah.
Yeah, so with the knowledge that we know that she is technically Steve's niece, it's kind of weird.
Well, but in defense of Steve, he's perpetually in his 20s in those movies, and he didn't know that she was his niece at the time. And also, she was of full legal consenting age and didn't know him previously either. So there's that.
I don't know. It's still weird.
Yeah, squeaky. So yeah, your one your
It's like
assertion
Marty McFly with his mom.
a bit
Time travel, man. It gets fucking weird.
time travel. You can't keep it straight in your head, to quote the 11th Doctor. But yeah, your one assertion, my dear writer, about nuclear families is kind of moot from all the directions that I've tried to analyze it from.
Frank says Hawkeye gets his family together. So yes.
I guess, yeah, but that's far from the entirety of the movie. The point he's trying to make is that the entire movie has a pro-nuclear family bias, and as we've established, as far as we know, Peggy and Steve are a old married couple that never had children, and as far as we know, Pepper is now a single mom in 2019, so very much not the nuclear family.
Yep. Okay. So Tony Stark dies, but not before settling down as a husband and a father. Okay. Steve Rogers
Pepper is
goes
still
back.
a single mom at the end of the movie, so you could make the argument that the movie was leading up to the destruction of the nuclear family, basically.
Steve Rogers goes back in time and marries Peggy Carter, an idea that makes no emotional sense for reasons I'll explain in a moment.
Okay, he is actually going to try to explain. Well done.
Well, he doesn't explain. He doesn't explain it after this, but Hawkeye returns peacefully to his family after spending 5 years on a killing spree. Yeah, we covered that in our review as well. You know, it's just
yeah.
Ant-Man and Wasp curl up with his now teenage daughter. So, she's more of a stepmother than anything.
Well, also they're not in a relationship as far as we know, so
I thought they were.
she's basically just a family friend at this point, to the best of my knowledge. They might have gotten together in Ant-Man and the Wasp, but I don't remember that happening. I think she's just his partner and a family friend, if anything. So yeah, he's still a single dad, at least until he and Hope actually get together. So your point is once again moot. It applies to exactly one set of characters whose entire like modus operandi was I missed my family.
Okay.
And I've been trying to atone for them.
So Sis XL, is it okay if I call you Sis? Is that fine? Like I shorten it because I'm having a hard time pronouncing your name. But Sis says, no, they have kids in Phase 4. I'm sure Sis is referring to Peggy and Steve. The kids can be LGBT plus. Then continues with lesbian super soldier, or how America Chavez is introduced to the MCU, and I will also refer to you as Chrono. Got it. Don't.
Yeah, we can move on. I don't really have anything else to.
Well, I thought you were going to say something about America Chavez.
Yeah, well, sigh, but right now I'm just.
The thing I don't get is America Chavez. Like, if she's Steve's kid, she wouldn't be called America Chavez then.
Well, and she's also from another dimension, classically in the comics, and from a all-female utopian parallel, where women can actually procreate. So if they make America Steve's kid, they're actually going to make her less progressive, and they would hoot and holler about that.
Yeah.
She
Eric.
needs to be the immaculate conception of two women, apparently.
Eric said, "Did someone mention America Chavez, written by National Treasure Gabby Rivera?"
Eric, I don't have the patience today to make me kill you.
Or his granddaughter. Okay. America Chavez, Steve's granddaughter. That could work.
I think if they actually bring America into the MCU, please God no, God why? But
well, they could turn the character into an actual good character.
Well, they can, and the MCU is pretty good at that. The only problem with Captain Marvel was the fact that they decided, for whatever reason, to go with the Kelly Sue DeConnick run instead of the '80s Miss Marvel run. But if they do that, they're probably going to establish the utopian parallel and the all gay women dimension. Otherwise, SJW would be rioting in the streets. And apparently their outrage matters more than our outrage, because reasons.
Okay, so meanwhile, Thor, who doesn't have a girlfriend, ends his rather downbeat arc by ceding his crown to Valkyrie.
Which results in him giving it to a woman and spending the entire movie as a body positive character by SJW logic. So you're either going to have to disagree with your own side there, sir, or you're going to have to admit that one of your compatriots' perspectives is wrong in some way.
I think this is a lady talking.
Okay, what's her name so I can...
Gavia Baker Whitelaw.
So her name is Gabby. That's hilarious.
Gavia. It's Gavia.
Well, I'm going to call her Gabby just because I think it'll make Eric laugh hysterically.
Okay. So
I'm sure that's a nickname that some of her friends call her. I would not be surprised. So,
okay. So Rhodey and Bruce, are two other bachelors, don't really get endings of their own, focusing instead on their grief for Tony. So at this point, Gabby is just mentioning stuff that happens in the movie.
So just to be clear, my darling, you don't consider grieving for a lost friend who died saving the fucking universe to be a sufficient ending. Wow. Just wow.
I could I could guess that maybe. I mean, the way I would probably guess is they could be inferring to that. I mean, Bruce, I could kind of get. Rhodey, maybe he could have picked up the mantle.
Yeah. which would have made sense. And interestingly, would have actually resulted in a Black Iron Man that everyone would have liked.
Yeah.
Because people forget this, but in the comics, Rhodey did take over for Tony at one point, and he was a really good and really well-liked character because it made sense because he was already War Machine. So he had the experience and the connection to Tony. The only time people lost their shit was when Riri came in and was like, Deus Ex Machina, Mary Sue girl. So yeah, if you're gonna do the diversity strategy of recasting, then give it to Rhodey, because Rhodey's a character that actually deserves the mantle if you must insist on making it a mantle.
Black Widow, as many fans have pointed out, doesn't get a proper send off, and me and
She
Dalton,
died saving the universe.
which is part of her arc, because she doesn't feel like she is a hero throughout most of the movies.
And more to the point, a large part of the reason why she died was because a bunch of writers in Hollywood wanted to get one over on our side of the argument, because basically everyone went, oh, these sexist people like this character, so let's stick it to them by insisting that this character dies. And Captain Marvel is the main female lead of the MCU, which your attempt to prove that we're sexist resulted in you killing off a female character just to stick it to us because we liked them. Do I need to explain the contradictory layers of logic there? Oh, right, because what you want is not a female character, you want a feminist character. And Natasha was a stable meritocratic female character who never really cucked herself out to the feminist ideology, and therefore she's not feminist enough. But Captain Marvel certainly is. Yeah, I reiterate one of my points from a while ago. You don't actually want female characters, you want ideologically female characters, i.e. feminist characters. Because anything
You know,
else would be internalized misogyny.
well, first off, I really need to invest in a soundboard. It's a pain in the ass. But I will play this clip, which I've played a few times on this stream.
Hit the button.
Oh, damn it.
You're a fucking idiot.
By the way, is that a JonTron clip or is that Christopher Walken?
Ah, shit. Well, I closed it, so I can't answer it yet, but
Because it sounds a little bit. It sounds a little bit like an older Christopher Walken, but it also sounds like JonTron.
it's not JonTron and it's not Christopher Walken. It's a guy. But, sorry. What you were saying about the SJWs not wanting female characters, which are essentially just characters who are female.
Yeah, they want ideologically feminist characters.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they're not womanly enough. Even though they hate the concept of femininity and find it oppressive.
Yeah. What I was going to say is that, and kind of to self-plug my other channel, Brainstormer Pop Culture, which is like my main channel. The video I did for my all-female superhero concept idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wrote those characters just as characters. I wrote them to be. They're not ideologues at all. Like literally, you could swap them for dudes, each of those characters, and they would be the same. They'd still be the same.
Mm-hmm.
So, and kind of take it reference from Alien. Ellen Ripley was originally written as a dude, but Ripley changed it. Not Ripley. Ridley. Ridley Scott changed it. Because I believe, I'm trying to paraphrase here. because he didn't think there were a lot of main female characters at the time when he made Alien.
Which is still a facile point and one that I would probably disagree with him on, but at least in the 80s, you could have made the argument was a bit stronger. And you'll notice how nobody cared, and even if someone did care, they actually liked Ellen Ripley better as a woman than they would have if she was a male character, probably. Which kind of gives lie to this whole women have always been the historically oppressed gender nonsense, doesn't it?
So yeah, so essentially, what I'm trying to say is,
Who's there?
oh, what the fuck?
Wrong clip.
Actually, that was an ad for the original video that I took the clip from. That the clip was from.
Ah,
That was my bad. But the video itself is by a guy named Brock Baker, and it's in there. Not gonna say the title of it just because, but yeah, so that's who that guy was. But essentially, we're both on agreement is that you you write the characters first, you make them empathetic. Well, okay, maybe not, because you can enjoy a character without being empathized.
you make them empathizable, I think
Uh-huh.
is kind of the word you were looking for, so that
Well,
people can empathize with
it's
them.
not that like I like a couple of villain characters like antagonists and stuff.
Mhm.
Major one is like Heath Ledger's Joker, but I can't empathize with that guy at all.
You make a character with merit, and the rest is history. Kind of is the rule.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on back to the article. For Black Widow and the film's other female lead, Nebula, there's an argument to be made that Endgame's writers can't handle a happy ending for a woman without heterosexual romance. Fuck you. Probably should have kept the clip.
Oi.
Yeah, so I'm gonna get that clip again.
No, my darling. The thing that the defining characteristic of what you seem to be avoiding here is that for some people, not all, but some, finding someone who you can romantically fall in love with and get loved by is a key feature of happiness. Finding someone to love you and who you love in return is a key human drive, whether sex is on the table or not. Because sometimes you just want to be with a person because you find them to be such an integral part of your happiness that you would feel out of place if they weren't in your world or didn't contribute to your overall happy ending. And for other characters, they have other things that drive them and define them. For example, yes, Wanda is grieving Vision and everything, but she also kicks major ass, and no one feels the need to force another relationship on her at the end of the movie, which kind of gives lie to your point here. And are you honestly telling me that if they had left Gamora dead, you wouldn't be complaining that they lampshaded one, if not both, of the female Guardians characters? And I noticed that you're not forcing anything with Mantis because Mantis doesn't really have anything romantically involved yet. There's a thing between her and Drax that I think they are going to end up touching on in Guardians 3, but it again gives lie to your whole everything is devoted to straight relationships bullshit.
Yep.
And of course, Captain Marvel doesn't have any relationship with anyone at this point. Even Nick Fury, who she apparently dropped everything to come to Earth for, never gets so much as a conclusion scene with her, which would have actually been a really nice way of concluding her character if she visited him again afterwards. Of course,
Yeah.
it probably would have led to them laughing over the fact that his eye got drug out by a cat, and that would have ruined.
I feel like I should do a episode of Brainstormer rewrites Captain Marvel at some point in the future.
Yeah, there's so many more interesting ways you could go about him losing his eye.
Yeah, well, I think
Even
I think I mentioned it before when we were talking Captain Marvel, and I realize we're kind of veering off topic here, but it's something to be said. Like I said, I wanted to, if I was doing a Captain Marvel movie, I would have had it in the vein of Lethal Weapon, like
that's a good idea.
like a cosmic Lethal Weapon. Like Nick Fury's like the kind of not rookie, but also not like the old guard.
Yeah,
Like kind of the guy in the middle, where he's like kind of thinking
he's a seasoned agent, but he's sort of over the hill, as they say.
yeah, he's not like he's. I'm trying to remember this, but essentially, what and I would kind of have Carol or Veers, as she's called for most of the movie, be kind of like the alien rookie. I would kind of keep the amnesia, but the amnesia thing, but I would actually properly develop that.
Yeah.
And probably cast someone different as Carol Danvers.
Again, I truly think that Captain Marvel would have been a much better movie if they had cast Ronda Rousey.
She can't act.
Hmm?
I don't think she can act, can she?
I don't know. I mean, Dave Bautista wouldn't have been an actor before he was Drax, and everybody loved him. And same with The Rock, he wasn't an actor until he was an actor. So I I, I would say at least she would have been more likable than Brie Larson, and that would have been a good step in the right direction. And also a lot of the choices the directors made had to do with Brie Larson's input. So
Yeah, you know
imagine if
what? I would have also gotten. I would have actually gotten some better directors.
I don't know. I've seen some of their other stuff. I don't think that some of the big problems with Captain Marvel were the director's fault. I think it was largely they basically went to Brie and asked, "What would you like this character to be?" And then they wrote her like that.
So
Also,
you're probably the right
their
fault.
biggest mistake was also basing it off the Kelly Sue the Comic run because fuck you.
Yeah. Okay, so kind of moving back here, because we got a couple more articles to cover, and we're kind of all right. So Natasha Romanoff probably died because Scarlett Johansson wants to leave the franchise after her solo movie, but the way Endgame handled her departure was disappointing.
She was one of the main emotional thrusts of the entire movie. Thank you very much. She was one of the key features in how the thing wrapped up. And I agree with you, it was kind of poorly handled, but you can't say it was poorly handled because it wasn't important enough.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I actually wouldn't. Uh, Maybe that's a debate for another time, but yeah, I mean, like, it didn't get me crying, which is how I normally judge a good movie. Um, but it was a very emotional scene, just based on the fact that we've spent like 10 years, a little over 10 years with these characters.
Mm-hmm.
We're attached to them and all that. Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, this is. You, I mean, yeah, I could have done better, but in the context of the situation, I think it was handled pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so following a lifetime of physical and emotional abuse, well, she and Nebula end up killing themselves for the greater good.
Yeah.
Nebula is kind of a tricky one, though, just on the fact that she doesn't technically kill herself, but she also technically does.
She kills her past self.
Yeah, which is symbolic.
Yeah.
Yeah, even though it's technically
Yeah.
very, very.
She actually survives, whereas past Gamora did or future Gamora didn't.
I would think that's more present Gamora, right?
future relative to when the new one comes in the timeline, I guess. But yeah,
It's all weird. Time travel, man.
time travel, you can't keep it straight in your head. And as I believe it was Douglas Adams said, the weirdest thing about time travel is the tenses.
Mhm. Okay, so Black Widow and Hawkeye and the nuclear family. Okay.
Okay.
Um, okay. Before we do this, let's kind of debate. Let's discuss Hawkeye and Black Widow in the Marvel movies. Just on the like their relationship, I guess. Like in the Avengers, I would say it was kind of more. Because I'm not sure if they already wrote the idea down that Hawkeye had a family. It was like a family man. Because I'm pretty sure they didn't. Because it seemed like their relationship was very flirtatious and stuff in Avengers.
I thought it was more just good friends that had like gone
Well,
through some shit together.
yeah. Friends can also flirt with each other and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I've had a few times where I've done that with friends. Kinda.
It's hard to imagine you flirting ever. You don't seem like the kind of person that flirts. No offense.
None taken. I mean, like I sucked at it, but we did it. We flirted with each other. We, teased each other and stuff. That's how we did. That's how we work. But yeah, in the second one, you can see more of like they are good friends and they do care about each other and stuff. It's kind of like a brother and sister in a way, and not like how a brother and sister is normally. Like with me and my sister, it was like we got into fights.
Yeah.
I'm not talking verbal. I'm talking we actually went at each other.
I'm fairly certain that if there are any feminists watching, they just called you a misogynist for hitting a woman.
He hit first. I was totally within my right to fight back. Plus, we were like, I don't know, 5 or 6, and she kicked my ass.
But my male physiology, though, cry all the feminists.
Hey, she kicked. Hey, she kicked. Okay, in places that no guy should ever be kicked. She cheated. Plus, I might have let her win a few times, and I'm saying that just so I help my bruised ego.
Yeah, sure, you let her win.
Yeah.
Well, he's secretly in the fetal position afraid of his own sister.
I don't do fetal. I'm not a fetal position guy. I am. Well, I like to describe myself as a wrecking ball sometimes. And my sister would be bulldozer.
Ah.
So either way, we're both built to ingrained in us is kind of like that stance of you don't mess with us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So, The Winter Soldier is probably her best movie, portraying her as a veteran spy with a dry sense of humor. Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. No, wait, I didn't even read the first part. Oh, okay. Well, that's the first thing I saw. So, thanks to thanks to being written by multiple writers over multiple films, Black Widow has an uneven role in the MCU.
I don't know. I think she's fairly consistent.
Yeah, I wouldn't say she's like. I mean, there are changes, but she does stay the same as like
And
she does have a
a
sense of
lot of
humor.
those changes could be attributed to character growth.
Yeah,
It
she
seems
is
more like
humorous.
it seems more just like a consistent. This person went through some shit in the time that she's been off screen, so now she behaves this way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Captain America: The Winter Soldier is probably the best movie portraying her as a veteran spy with dressed humor. I agree.
Yeah.
She is, I think she would.
Her connection to Cap is really something special there.
Not romantic, by the way.
No, it's an entirely platonic friendship, but that's one of the reasons why it works. They respect each other as fellow agents. They're work buddies basically is how it comes across. They're work buddies who are also really good friends.
Yeah.
Outside of work. or that are
To bring
bonded
up an
inside
example
work
of the
and
work buddy dynamic,
Hmm?
I could see like to kind of bring an example from Winter Soldier. The work buddy, what he said. Like right before their first mission, uh, she's trying to set up Steve for a date, and he's putting it off and stuff. And obviously, there's like deeper subtext for Captain America there because he doesn't want to date, and
yeah,
doesn't think he deserves to date and stuff.
Peggy. Yeah.
And
And also Bucky, because Stucky does make some kind of sense.
yeah, I'd say they're more brothers than lovers, but to each their own.
Yeah,
But
either way, though, it's just he's just so done with people. Is the thing. He doesn't want anyone to get close again, and that's why his friendship with Sam works so well. Because even though he's trying to keep him at a distance, he's still the charming, naive Captain America. So even when Captain America's trying not to be charming, he's gonna end up being charming because
he's still
look
that
at his
little guy.
face.
Yeah, he's still that little guy from Brooklyn who's too stupid to run away from a fight.
Yep. He hasn't
Which
really
I really
changed at
love.
all, which is one of the reasons I like Cap, because it gives him this sort of youthful naivety that he basically keeps through the entire thing. It's funny to me that everyone lost their shit over him swearing in Endgame, but thinking about it, like, the guy did just delete half the life in the universe. So think about that. That's
Wait,
what it
he cursed?
in Endgame he says, "Let's go get this son of a bitch."
Well, he also cursed in Age of Ultron too when he called Fury the same thing. So
Yeah, but the point being, it it is, a break in his character to see him curse, but think about what made him do it. What made him do it both times was someone who's going to destroy the entire planet or universe. And that's what it takes to get Captain America to swear.
yeah. Okay. Age of
Which is a
Ultron is
perfectly reasonable standard for breaking your personal rules there. When half the life in the universe disappears, you're fully allowed to swear. I don't care who you are.
okay. So Age of Ultron is her worst with Joss Whedon introducing the wildly sexist idea that Natasha sees herself as a monster because she's infertile, and therefore she can't have a relationship with Bruce Banner.
Oh, for fuck's sake, no, that's not. That is the most straw equivalent of that premise there. What makes her feel like um
A monster is because she killed a bunch of people.
well not just that. In relation to her sterilization, the thing that makes her feel like a monster is not that she can't give birth or have like relationships like that. It's that this is something that was inflicted on her invasively by sterile scientific meddling, which in most cases would qualify as a form of rape. It, feminists who make this argument, imagine for me the moment where you were kidnapped by a mad scientist, and said mad scientist sticks a bunch of tools and medical bullshit into your areas, and that sterilizes you. Would you or would you not consider that a violation of your personal autonomy? That is what she's reacting to that makes her feel like a monster. It's not that she can't give birth that is the part that she dislikes. It's that was inflicted on her by science experiments.
To draw upon an earlier statement that the writer of this article said, a lifetime of physical and emotional abuse.
Yeah. If you want to breed a more feminist, charitable version of Natasha's story, think about what that would be if, say, a pro-life person decided they were going to perform a cesarean section on you rather than let you have an abortion. That's basically the real life equivalent of what happened to Natasha by the hands of those scientists. They violated her so royally that she can now no longer have children. It's not the sterility itself that's the issue. It's that was inflicted upon her and changed her nature as a woman. And now basically she no longer has control over her own sexuality. In most feminist circles, that would be a pretty good criteria for rape, and I would actually agree with you on that. So instead of seeing it as an issue because she can no longer give birth and she finds that objectionable, see it as basically a rape allegory. She was her sexual vitality was forcefully taken away from her by sterile injections and whatnot in a scientific manner. It's basically the ultimate actualization of the thing that feminists always get
Hey,
hot and bothered over, which is the
Dom, you're glitching
oh,
out.
sorry, it's basically an equivalent of that thing that feminists always get hot and bothered over, which is Victorian hysteria tools, because the thought was that when a woman got uh exasperated or insane, it was because she hadn't gotten laid enough, so they would forcefully masturbate a woman to alleviate what they call hysteria. It's basically the modern day equivalent of that. So don't try and tell me that there aren't feminist positive or pro-feminist spins on this narrative just because she happens to be sterilized.
That sounds fucked.
Yep.
So many levels. But I was gonna say, I think I was gonna do more of that. I think she does long for an actual life, a normal life. You know, being a mother and all that.
Yep.
And I guess the part I was gonna say is essential. Uh, yeah, she wants a normal life. Because having a kid for anyone changes your life.
Yep.
And her being an assassin and stuff, I mean, come on.
She isn't allowed to experience human empathy. She has to turn it off to be good at what she does, because otherwise, the people who made her an assassin will do all kinds of horrible things to her, i.e., the sterilization thing and,
Yeah,
the violence and privacy that is.
I think the oldest phrase, I don't know, I don't know if this came before a movie or it was introduced by the movie. The quickest way to kill your opponent is through their heart, right?
Yep.
So, if she doesn't technically have a heart, like she can't empathize with seeing a child or something, and she
Yeah,
doesn't have a child.
she has no she if you take a person's impetus of what they live for, you've as good as condemned them to death without actually killing them. If you take everything that matters to someone, you've essentially condemned them to death without needing to draw a single drop of blood.
It's funny. Do you remember that movie, Next Avengers? The,
No.
it was that animated Marvel movie where it's like the kids of the uh, Avengers have to fight Ultron because he's basically taken over the world.
Oh, right. Okay, I think I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah, and the son of Captain America, and Black Widow, and all that. It's an interesting concept, but I just thought I'd bring that up. And I mean, like, Black Widow hasn't really been entered. I'm sure in that kind of universe, she would have given up the life of being a superhero and a life of a spy and all that to raise the child.
Yep.
So that's just another reason why she was made infertile, is because they didn't want her to leave the life. Okay. This subplot arrived at the same time as Hawkeye's thinly characterized family, whose main role was to reboot Clint Barton as an everyman dad.
They set this up in Age of Ultron, and I will grant you that Age of Ultron is the weakest of the Avengers movies by a wide margin. But they did set this up, and it was the thing that Joss Whedon believed in so passionately that he forwent the rest of his job. Think about that. It had nothing to do with some straight agenda and everything to do with what made sense for the character and what Joss Whedon wanted to do with him. And what's more is it was largely included to shut up all the people who are like, why is Hawkeye on the team? He's just a guy with a bow and arrow. Herp.
The same thing could be said about Black Widow.
Yeah, she's just a spy with some kung fu, and she doesn't even have cool James Bond gadgets. Why is she on the team?
Actually, she has those cool electro spider fight thingies.
She does have the Widow's Sting gauntlet, yeah.
Yeah.
But still, that's hardly much better than Hawkeye's trick arrows. But point being, this was a thing that was established many movies ago and done well. For the best part of Age of Ultron is the stuff at the farmhouse. Oddly enough.
Yeah, I actually am. Well, that's a topic for another time. Maybe we'll do next podcast after that where we'll talk about essentially things we would have done differently in the MCU, like movies and stuff.
Yep.
That'll be an interesting podcast. Okay, as critic Clark Keisha Kent. Like, see
Yeah.
that at all?
Names.
Does it sound familiar?
A little bit.
Clark Kent. You take
Yeah,
up
I know.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if anyone was picking up on that. Okay, so as critic Clark Keisha points out in this excellent Twitter thread, oh, so it's a critic that posts something on Twitter. That's okay. And Tasha's inability to have children foreshadowed her expendability in Endgame. What the? You know what? I want to open.
No.
I want to open this link and read the threads. I'm curious. You know?
Why not? Oi.
Well, I mean, not like right now, but
At some point though, yeah.
Yeah. I will actually. Well, I'll.
Maybe something for next week.
Yeah, actually, that'd be good. Okay, so Tasha sacrifices herself so Hawkeye can return to his family. An idea that has no emotional reward because we don't know Hawkeye's family. Motherfucker, did you not see the? Okay, hold on. You know what? I'm gonna.
Age of Ultron, the 20-minute section that we spent getting to know Hawkeye's family. Hello.
And the beginning of Endgame, which was one of the most emotional fucking moments of that movie.
Was the dusting of the family that was his entire motivation for going all dark and samurai-esque.
Yeah. May I play the clip, sir?
Hit the button.
You're a fucking idiot. You're a fucking idiot.
Sorry.
No, that needed a few of those. So by all means, Okay.
But one thing, it does have an emotional reward for Hawkeye as a character and Black Widow as an end of her arc.
Yeah, she wanted to, okay, this is essentially in a way, Widow is similar to Quentin in The Magicians. One of Quentin's last lines in The Magicians, and this is a complete sidebar, but I think it's relevant here, was, did I find, or no, what was it? Did I do something brave to save my friends, or did I finally find a way of killing myself? That's kind of the same motivation that Natasha had. She wanted to do something so worthy, so worthwhile that she could wipe out the red in her ledger, as she put it. So this was her deciding, this is where I make my stand. This is how I'm going to atone for all those things. I'm going to sacrifice myself so that the entirety of the universe can be saved. And did you miss the part where Hulk tries to bring her back and fails because some things just can't be undone? That was treated with exactly the amount of emotional weight it probably should have been. Granted, I would have preferred if it wasn't if that particular part of the story had gone down a little bit differently, but
I believe
I have no problems with that particular scene on its own merits. I just don't really think it serves the character all that well.
you said in the in-game review that the uh, the the final act should have been like the first chunk of the movie should have been like the first act, and then the scuffle, the fight for the third act should have been the second act, and then the third act is basically the mourning and stuff, basically just everyone kind of trying to resettle into their world.
Yeah.
And I agree that would have been a lot better and probably would have. I don't want to say break the mold of superhero movies because I think you've said it once or twice that we're still trying to do.
We're still we're still kind of in the process of defining what a superhero movie is. We're still in the infancy of the genre. It's still developing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would have been nice, and it also would have allowed for a lot more cosmic shit to be addressed. Like, for example, the cosmic entity showing up and being like, dude, what the fuck happened? And kicking the shit out of Thanos.
I want to say let it go, but I know you won't.
And now you fucking put that song in my head. Thank you for that.
My bad.
Let it go. Let it
Oh,
go.
god damn it, you bastard. Now that's stuck in my head.
Well, you turnabout is fair play. So there.
Well,
Now,
I only said let it go. I didn't mean the song. That's your fault because your mind automatically went there.
true, but now we both can suffer the slings and arrows of Idina Menzel.
I mean, the song's not. I mean, the song is okay, but
No, it's good. It's just
it's annoyingly catchy.
it's so good and so catchy that it actually never leaves your head once it's in there. It's the problem.
Yeah,
It's too good.
It's to the point where you just want to grab a shotgun,
Yeah, but let's get back to the article as we're in the process of letting it go.
Okay, unlike Pepper Potts or Cassie or Ant-Man's daughter Cassie, who have memorable roles, Hawkeye's wife and kids are cardboard cutouts who get fridged so he can have a homicidal makeover. Don, before you
Did
go
you
on, before you do that, let me do this.
go ahead?
You're a fucking idiot.
Did you not see
You're
the
a fucking idiot.
Did you not see the fucking Joss Whedon exiling portion of Age of Ultron that he fought so hard to put in that movie? Or are you just forgetting strategically that existed because it makes your argument look shitty? Well,
I
I'm
would
sorry,
say
my darling, but you can't really blame, neutral logic and evidence for making your argument look shitty because it's just possible you might have just had a shitty argument.
I would say the kids aren't as clearly defined, but the wife certainly is.
Well, yeah, and we did see like bonding scenes between him and his kids during like not only in Age of Ultron but also towards the very beginning of this movie when he's teaching his daughter to shoot shit.
Yeah. Okay. While the other childless Avengers respond to Thanos' snap on a macro level, Hawkeye's reaction is keenly personal and much more extreme. He becomes a serial killer. No shit, that's kind of the point.
Yeah, you've just described the way that the plot works.
That's
What
how
is
most
your
of
point?
the articles go, anyway. If you look back, that's how most of them. That's how they pad out these articles and mostly use it as a way to try and not justify themselves, but They just describe what happens in the movie, and then they put in some type of virtue signaling bullshit.
Yeah, it's just I personally didn't like this one particular thing, even though it made perfect sense for the context of the plot. Well, I'm sorry, my darling, but unless you actually make an argument about why that invalidates this movie, you're going to have to actually drop this point. Either validate this point with some reasoning, or drop the point because it's not relevant to anything. One or the other, but you do have to pick one, I'm afraid. I prefer you to validate your point with reasoning because I prefer reasoning in general, but yeah. I don't think so.
Okay.
We're gonna get that, but I don't think we're gonna get that.
Did you repeat that, Don? That you were a little muffled.
I said I hold out hope we're going to get that, but I don't think we're going to get that.
What do
Moving
you
on.
mean?
Reasoning. I hold out hope we're going to get some reasoning and some logic behind the assertions, but I doubt it very highly.
It is good to hope, even when it is clearly obvious that it's the opposite of hope.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
But
so
let's continue anyway.
yet instead of setting him up for redemption, i.e., by sacrificing himself on Boromir, we're expected to forget this killing spree once he reunites with his family.
Because his killing spree was a measure of grief, and he was mostly killing criminals, lest we forget. And more importantly, you're criticizing them for not giving him self-sacrifice, but I guarantee you that if he had been the one to self-sacrifice and she hadn't, you would be bitching about how they gave the key redemptive arc to a straight white man.
There's no pleasing them, you know that?
Instead of a woman. And here we have a woman sacrificing herself for the sake of the entire goddamn universe, and it's still not good enough for you. Because apparently the straight white character also gets served in a different way.
There is literally no pleasing these people.
Nope. All roads lead to fuck you, you're a misogynist, apparently.
Or racist, or authoritarian, or Nazi, or
Insert power word discredit here.
okay. Like most of the happy endings in Endgame, this reunion is viewed by the man's perspective, with wives and children providing solace after men return from battle.
Okay, because he was okay. Because he is the character we are following as he strives for them. And once again, I must point out, we already got acquainted with these characters fairly well, in fact, in Age of Ultron, which is, again, probably the weakest of the Avengers movies, but they still managed to do this one thing right, which is they spent a good 20 minutes of that movie establishing his connection to his family and his home life. And them getting busted was his entire motivation for the entire movie. So are you suggesting that we shouldn't see the payoff for that, for him working through his shit? Or are you suggesting that immediately when they popped back into existence, we should switch over to their perspective and not pay any attention to any of the shit that was actually going on or that was relevant to the plot? Should we have completely moved the movie over to their perspective as they waited for him to come home and missed the action entirely? Is that what you're saying? Because that really sounds like what you're saying.
May I, Dalton?
Yes.
You're a fucking idiot.
Agreed.
You're
Sorry, that's on my part.
Hairpin trigger.
Well, I'm playing a video, so
Yep.
time I restarted, it just
Well, but sometimes things require more than one "you're a fucking idiot," so it works.
Yeah.
It doesn't really feel wrong.
just on. Yeah, for one thing, they're allowed to have a happy ending based on the fact that Infinity War left on a fucking downer.
Yep.
But
And
It's not a
also,
man's perspective; it's a fucking person's perspective.
yeah, it speaks to nothing. It speaks to nothing particular in the male experience yet again. But more to the point, do you not think that their happy ending would be him saving the universe and coming home? See, this is the one-sided perspective that these people have. Because the main focus is him earning his family back, they see it as only a reward for him when they do come back. But do you not think that they, as people that love this character, would be grateful to have him back as well? You seem to think that this is some imprisonment that they've been placed into, like they don't appreciate him in the same way he appreciates them, and therefore it's a reward for him but not them. No, they also very much love him, and they did just get back from being turned to dust, so I would imagine they would be very happy as well. But you can't conceive of a case where all parties involved could be happy. You have to make it one person's happiness over the others, because you can only see things in the fucking Hegelian falsely dichotomous power dynamic bullshit you have in your head.
May I, to bring up a point is that you know not everyone gets a happy ending in a way. With what you're saying, like, can I bring up an example of like something I've been working on, like one of my projects,
Sure.
writing? Yeah. So I've written like this. I've mentioned a few times, the show called Reaper, the series, and all that. And, with the like kind of Punisher turned superhero character,
Mm-hmm.
and how he dies trying to do the right thing because in his past he was a violent psychopath who killed a bunch of people, even though they were criminals. He killed them with no remorse. And in the end of his life, he did try to do the right thing by like apologizing to someone that he hurt by the person he was back then. And he is surrounded by people that care about him, and they mourn him. But he dies essentially happy because he leaves behind people he knows will do the right thing in his name and stuff. And he at least tried to be good to the person that he had wronged before. So it's both it's a bittersweet ending essentially, which is like how Avengers Endgame kind of ended.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, before we move on, Eric Brainshot back with a couple things which I think you're gonna love, Dalton. Maybe
Yeah, I'm looking at it, but get to it. Boy.
maybe that's why all of media caters to these idiots. Everyone wants to be the first that actually does please them. The ultimate challenge.
No, I think it's because on the whole, the people in Hollywood actually agree with these idiots because their moral zeitgeist is the popular moral zeitgeist among the upper classes. It's why I've taken to using the term martini feminism. If champagne socialism is a thing, so is martini feminism.
My story I am writing will Chrono says, my story I am writing will piss them off, and I will be hitting them with DMCA's out the six and taking part of the money from their advertising profits. What's
Mm-hmm.
DMCA?
He's basically saying that if any SJWs try to rant and rave about his idea, he's going to hit them with copyright claims. Also, Eric, I saw your little Gabby is greater than Neil Gaiman thing. Don't make me want to kill you, Eric. Why must you do this to yourself?
He is probably like one of his earlier comments says, "While you're plotting, he'll probably pass from national causes, so you won't have the satisfaction of your revenge."
I don't know. I can think of some pretty satisfying revenges.
Eric, you do realize Dalton is an occultist. He can probably bring it back.
Yes, and to quote Jafar from Return of Jafar, even if I wasn't to kill you, you'd be surprised what you can live through. Eric, don't double down on that shit. You're going to make me want to do terrible things to you again.
Do you know how to get a voodoo doll or make one?
I have to ask myself the question: is Eric really worth the effort? Because curses take such long times, and I don't have the time or energy to waste on Eric Green.
So you're kind of lazy when it comes to curses.
No, it's just they take a lot of energy, so you have to be very careful about the way you utilize your energy.
Huh.
In other words, Eric, I wouldn't even curse you, to paraphrase Sargon.
That's good to know, I guess. Kinda. Maybe.
Because you're simply not worth the effort. Zing.
Ouch. Also, ouch from Eric. I don't know if that's a zing to you or a zing to me or a zing to both of us. Otherwise, anyway, my EO is a little bit bruised. As I come to your live streams, I'm dying a little bit each time. So you've died 13 times, Eric, every week.
Well, he's not saying he dies each time. He's saying he dies a little bit each time, so he gets closer to death each time, which means it's working. There.
Okay. Alright, so despite the film's celebration of friendship and teamwork, its ending downplays the role of found family relationships.
How?
The Avengers are the closest thing Natasha has to family. Steve Rogers' most enduring relationship is with Bucky Barnes, but these don't fit into a heteronormative image of family. So Endgame erases them. Okay, I'm playing the clip again. I'm doing it at least 5 times.
You're a fucking idiot. 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 You're a fucking idiot.
So 6 times.
Are we good?
Yeah, we're good.
Have you let all of the holy fuck this person is stupid out of your system?
Well, I still want to put my fist through a wall, so no. But
Okay.
you know,
Okay. Let me see if I can explain this, and forgive me because I'm a little bit tired, because talking to Tim and Mark did tire me out quite quickly. But here's the thing. The thing you are not considering here is what these characters themselves would want. Because you are so convinced that your single moral system is the only correct moral system that you will simultaneously demand that all art caters to you, but also not validate art enough to care what the characters themselves want. Because to you, these characters are a reflection of the oppressive, patriarchal, heteronormative system. And you can't see them as anything other than that. You can't see them as entities in their own right with their own wants and desires, even though your entire argument is based around what these characters symbolize and or what their individual wants and desires could or should be. You simultaneously care so much about fictional characters that you need to bend everything over backwards so that everything caters to your particular moral whims, but not enough to actually consider the agency or individuality of these characters. And that, my darling, is the bedrock of philosophical hypocrisy. Either you care about these characters enough to think that they should be reflective of your morality, or you don't care about them enough to acknowledge their personhood and agency. You can't have it both ways. And if you do care so much that you want everything to bend over backwards to your ideology, then you should probably take into account the actual desires that these characters are demonstrated to have. Instead of seeing these desires as simply social constructions or reflections of wider society, you should think about these characters as individuals. But you can't see individuals, be they fictional or non-fictional. And that's your biggest problem here. You can't conceive of anyone, even a person who's fictional, who disagrees with you on a moral or philosophical level.
Agreed. Damn it, I was gonna say something. Give me one moment. Yeah, right. Okay, so term of family, I don't think this person understands family that much. Like, the idea is like when you find a family you truly care about, a family that you love and devote yourself to, that you will do anything to keep them together, like she did tried to do in Civil War, is that you're willing to do anything to keep.
Including self-sacrifice.
Yeah, you're willing to do anything to keep them safe.
But I suspect that you, my darling, would define her need for self-sacrifice to keep the entire universe safe as internalized misogyny because it results in her own oppression. You genuinely, I would bet that you genuinely think that her self-sacrifice is bad because it kills a woman. Never mind that that woman has philosophically valid reasons for wanting to commit that self-sacrifice. A system that results in that self-sacrifice in your mind is bad because it causes a woman to hurt herself, which is the essence of internalized misogyny in your mind. Which again, you completely ignored the actual wants and desires of this character and her personal motivations, because her personal motivations require you to believe that things do have value, and you can't force your neurons to bend that way because it's not in your ideology. Brainstorm?
I'm sorry. I had my mic turned off for a sec.
Okay. I
What?
was just like, it
Yeah.
got very quiet. Did the mic drop break the universe again?
Yeah. But I was reading this. Marvel's battle against queer subtext. Now, what I was saying before I realized I had my mic off. um, I was saying that it, I'm sure there is subtext of that kind within Marvel movies. Right? I'm not discouraging that. There probably is if I look through those movies at the back catalogs. But I'm
Well,
sure.
yes, Stucky as a ship does make sense, so there is at least some.
Yeah. Well, what I was saying is I'm thinking this writer is mostly projecting.
Yep.
And again, like I'm not saying that there isn't queer subtext within the Marvel movies. I'm just saying like
Yep.
there's probably not a lot that this writer is probably making it out to see.
Yeah, this is another case of simple neutrality or simple indifference being taken as a negative, because in this person's mind, queers and, well, the LGBT uh have been oppressed, therefore any indifference to them is continuing their oppression. But in actuality, speaking myself as a bisexual person who mostly prefers dudes, um, the oppression, as you call it, was largely due to ignorance or misapprehension, not direct malevolence. Therefore, neutrality is actually a godsend because in a lot of cases, people that were gay or bisexual or LGBT, as you would put it, were in inferior positions and they simply wanted to be left alone to do their own thing and have their own romances and have, basically they wanted equal treatment and equal consideration, which is not a bad thing. But simply being indifferent is not bad in this case because a smaller proportion of the world is LGBT, and no characters as yet have literally been shown to be LGBT. Therefore, there is no need for LGBT characters to be in this any more than there is need for straight romance shit to be in this. In fact, one of the sorry, go ahead.
No, please. It was just going to be me adding that there isn't a lot of romance in most of these films.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
Aside
it's barely
from,
there.
aside from the main lead, who usually gets some kind of romantic lead to play off of, so that we have a window into their humanity and therefore can empathize with them better. There really isn't any romance, and even that being the case, because of the statistical lack of likelihood for there to be a gay character, in actuality, you should be more than fine with the blink and you miss it cameo, as you put it, that we did get, because that shows that at the very least there's no active discrimination going on. It's just indifference and the fact that it didn't come up from a story perspective yet.
Yeah, the fact is, and we covered this again, like in our review of Endgame. It would have worked the same way if you had changed it to her instead of him.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why it worked.
Yeah, it's not even about like the sex, the gender, or the same sex. It's not about the character being gay, is what I'm trying to say.
It's about who they actually have romantic feelings for, and if that person happens to be a male, then all the more power to you. But indifference is not oppression, because there are mitigating factors, like, for example, the mathematically less likely fact that it's mathematically less likely for there to be gay characters, so there will be fewer gay relationships. Deal with it. And I'm speaking as a bisexual person, so don't come at me with the "you're just a straight white male," and certainly also don't come at me with the internalized
Well,
heteronormativity, because fuck you. You don't get to define me based on how you think a gay person should act.
for the record,
Once again, identities are not teams, as I always say.
Yep.
Go ahead.
well, I was going to say they can't really call me out either because I'm not white.
Well, but you can have internalized whiteness, which basically means you're an invalid human because you don't think the proper way, and therefore you have Stockholm syndrome and secretly hate yourself.
Dude, I'm a mutt. I mean, we're all technically mutts by now, but
yeah.
Right. Okay. It's funny how we're able to just talk that much by just the title alone.
Yeah.
That shows how flawed this article is.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. While there aren't any openly LGBTQ, whatever. Avengers, the MCU full of queer subtext that fans have discussed for years. Valkyrie is clearly bisexual. Captain Marvel and her friend Maria could easily be read as a couple, and I'm going to finish that sentence, of friends. Let's stop there and just talk about that.
Either way, I don't care because I have no impetus to care about Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
You see how that works? The symbiotic relationship between human relationships making a character more relatable, and also the likability of the character making us give a damn about their personal relationships. It's sort of a cyclical symbiosis that Captain Marvel does not have because she is an unlikable, shrewish bitch.
What I was gonna say is, and I know, like, we have shit on Captain Marvel constantly,
And
just
so have
because
many others.
it's so easily to shit on it.
Yeah. To the point that I was going to recommend we cover the Captain Marvel scene, the expanded one that got
Well,
released recently,
yeah,
but I
we're
decided not to because it was a little bit too easy and we already had so many topics. We might cover it next week though, if you guys want us to.
yeah, I believe we are covering next week. We couldn't cover it this week because we had already so many articles to cover, but that kind of went a little sideways, I guess.
Yep.
But I was gonna say, like, I mean, like, yeah, it's easy for us to shit on it, but I think they tried at least with the relationship between Maria and Carol, and I always kind of thought they were trying to go with like kind of a sister-like relationship, like
Yeah,
siblings,
and
you know?
this is the other thing, and this is something that people ignore a lot too, which is romantic relationships aren't the only kind of relationship. Like I said earlier with Doctor Strange, it makes actually more sense for his character to abstain from romantic relationships entirely. And Captain Marvel might just be one of those people that isn't particularly interested in romance. And that's okay too. Not every deep personal connection has to be a romantic one. You can have platonic best friends that you care about a lot. Hell, John Wick, for example, its first movie revolved around him taking revenge for his dog dying.
Because it was a symbol for his dead wife. So
But that's neither here nor there. The point is, somebody fucked with his dog, and all the dog lovers in the audience just went, "Holy fucking shit! Yes, get him." And we didn't actually know for the for most of that movie that it was a gift from his dead wife. We just knew somebody fucked with his dog, and you shouldn't do that.
yeah,
So we cared because he evidently had very strong connections to this dog, and that was fine too. It doesn't need to be romantic relationships; it can just be a relationship. And if you give them strong enough internal conflicts, you might not even need to do that.
uh, to bring up a uh, real world examples of actual relationships. I've had multiple kind of friends. I mean, we've fallen out of contact with each other. That's more on my part because I am an antisocial asshole.
Mm-hmm.
But I've had plenty of friends who were female, and not many of them I've actually had uh, actual attraction to. Like, not in the way most guys do with girls.
Yeah, and for most of high school, despite what you might think, I spent most of my time with girls just because I thought that they were more down to earth and more relatable. Because most guys in high school are dickheads.
You know, it's
But
funny. That's kind of the opposite for me. I find most girls in my high school that were kind of just bitches.
I eventually found out that some of those people were as well. But point being, for a large part of my high school career, I spent a lot of time with women. Never was attracted to a single one of them because at that point I just thought I was gay instead of bisexual. I found out I was bisexual actually later on when I found a girl that I liked and did simple math because I'm one of those people that can do simple math. When you have one sexuality you're attracted to, and then you also find you're attracted to the other one, that is bisexuality because 1 + 1 = 2, you hopeless jackasses who can't write a bisexual character for some reason.
Honestly,
Complete mind fuck.
I don't think it's that hard to write a character that has a different sexuality than the author who's writing that character. You just
No,
it's
no,
basically you just write a
it's not
relationship.
that hard. It's just people constantly forget that there's a midpoint between straight and gay. So they constantly write it as though someone just switches from one to the other, as opposed to discovering they're bisexual, which would make more sense.
My main thing is like and sorry for anyone still watching. Is that we're kind of veering off topic here? Kinda off topic, but if your relationships themselves, whether gay or straight, they always have the same problems, right?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, it's different because interestingly enough, there's been actual like statistical research done on this. The rates of domestic abuse from different kinds of couples actually show that women on women relationships have more physically and verbally abusive outbursts than straight relationships do or male on male relationships do. In fact, statistically speaking, from all the data that we currently have, male on male relationships are actually the most stable and free from physical or verbal abuse on average.
Hey Dominic, you missed Timothy Lim and Mark. Uh, it's Mark. I feel horrible that I can't say his last name. Pellegrini. Yeah, Pellegrini.
Yeah. We had guests for about half the show and then they had to leave because reasons.
There's his stuff. Right now we're reading this stupid article. No.
Yes.
No, you didn't really miss much.
Yeah, let's actually get back into that then.
Yeah. And then there's Steve Rogers and Bucky Barnes. Okay, so they're bringing up Stucky. One of the greatest love stories, platonic or otherwise, in the franchise.
Okay, fair play.
Yeah. Though I wish they'd gotten more time together. Because I feel like it's a little underutilized. I mean, like, it's touched upon really greatly in Winter Soldier and Civil War. But after that, nothing really else. I mean, I don't know if you said it or it was Mark or Tim. Like, I think one of you guys said that Bucky was kind of a background character after like Civil War.
I think because he had already kind of served most of his establishing shit, and we already all liked him, so there was no need to. There was neither a need nor a place to stop the movie and go, "Hey, what's Bucky up to?"
Yeah. Okay, Bucky is the emotional cornerstone of the Captain America trilogy. Yeah, I would say that. I would say so.
Yeah, fair play.
Each film sees Steve rebel against authority for the sake of Bucky's well-being, escalating from disobeying orders in World War II, becoming an international fugitive in Civil War. But while this intense friendship goes just easily with Steve and Peggy's romance in the first two movies, things go off the rails after The Winter Soldier. From then on, Marvel gets antsy about giving Steve and Bucky too much screen time together.
Substantiate your claim, please. I think you might just be projecting motives.
I don't know. I feel like I should use this sound effect, but
No, I don't think this is straight up idiocy. I think this person is just projecting.
oh no, this is Donald Duck, like angry Donald Duck sound.
Ah.
I don't think it fits here anyway. So moving on. Okay, so from then on, no, I already read that. Civil War gave Steve an unconvincing new love interest, and the last two Avengers movies take pains to keep him and Bucky apart, avoiding the kind of crowd-pleasing reunion we see between characters with much less personal history.
I don't think they do take great pains. I think it's just we had more pressing shit to be dealing with at that moment because after Civil War, shit basically hit the fan for everyone except the solo movies.
Yeah, like you said, like Bucky was kind of done after Civil War, right?
He was in the middle of getting mentally deprogrammed by Shuri and Wakanda there. So like he
Yeah.
wasn't around for a large chunk of that, and for the rest of the time he was around, he was kind of fighting for the universe because, homicidal Titan tyrant was going to be doing the snapping thing.
Though I did wish that he he was the one old Steve had talked to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, I don't get me wrong. I like the scene with him and Falcon at the end. I just wish Bucky was right there too.
Yeah, because it honestly should have been both of them. Like I said to Tim and Mark, I think it would have been great to have them as a buddy act instead of one of them trying to take over the mantle.
I would say that in Civil War, Karen, uh, Karen Karen Carter, is it
Yeah.
Karen? Yeah,
Sharon.
Sharon Carter. She's not that. I mean, I liked her in Winter Soldier. I think Civil War she was a little underutilized.
I never saw them as a love interest though. I saw them like just random flirting because that occasionally happens.
Oh, trust me, I know. And yeah, I kind of flirt. I mean, like, I'm not good at it, but I flirt.
Hmm. Well,
Granted, I did most flirting in cooking class, so.
I can't say that I blame you. I don't think I flirted in cooking class because most of the people that I had cooking class with weren't attractive. Or actually, no, there was this one guy that I liked in my, I think it was my food 2 class because I took like 4 different food related classes.
But
There was one guy in there that I tentatively flirted with, but I was hindered by the fact that for most of my life I wasn't out of the closet, so he probably didn't even register it as flirting. He probably just thought I was being nice, which honestly is kind of how I wanted it because I don't want to. Most of the guys that I like probably could beat the shit out of me if they wanted to, so it was probably for the best that he didn't know I was
so,
flirting.
Eric shot back or something. Steve and Sharon have been on again, off again in the comics for almost 50 years. Huh.
This is true,
Yeah, okay, well, that's.
but they didn't really set that up in the movies.
I think it was I think it was better set up in Winter Soldier. I just don't think they. It's just, the whole trilogy thing with Captain America. It's just. They should have been built up a little bit more, maybe like with the Avengers movie, Age of Ultron or something. But, okay, so Steve and Bucky is the most popular ship in the MCU fandom. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's just a neutral statement at this point. Yes, it is.
Something that's reached the mainstream conversation around these movies. I don't.
I will point out this though, that just because something is popular doesn't mean it necessarily is valid. That's argumentum ad populum. So just because a lot of people like Stucky doesn't mean Stucky is a valid ship. You're gonna have to rationally justify
You know, type Captain America like in DeviantArt, and there's a lot of images of him and Bucky.
so much Stucky fan art. Yes, I know.
Though it's not like weird fan art or anything. Like, not the kind of
No,
fan art.
a large part of it is just wholesome shit.
Yeah,
And
which
I've got to say I can't really blame the Stucky fan community for that because Captain America is number one on my list of characters I would bang. So,
you should. I don't know if Weaponized Nerd Rage, when he was talking about Infinity War, like, I think he swooned over Captain America with like the beard and stuff.
see the beard doesn't work for me. I like clean shaven Steve because I like his like youthful naivete, and of course he's fucking just adorable to the nth degree. But enough of my gushing and mental fan fictions that I have just now cast myself in.
Well, Yeah, Eric, I agree. Movies shouldn't. They don't have to follow the comics. I just think I'm fine with them flirting like Steve and Sharon. I just think if they were thinking about making them a couple at some point, because I'm pretty sure they probably did, is Steve should have options.
Yeah,
But
it did. Either way, it didn't really set up Sharon as anything more than just the occasional tryst,
yeah,
and it didn't even get that far because Steve is too pure for this world, and that's one of the things that makes him cute.
I just
But
I just don't think they set up Agent Sharon Carter that well. So
no, they did not set up Agent Carter the Younger very well at all.
yeah, in in response, in-game feels like Marvel attempting to no homo its way out of Steve and Bucky's
Stucky.
images.
Yeah.
Yeah, a romantic couple. For one thing, I don't. It's been a long time since I've heard the word no homo.
Yeah, it's an old meme. It's
Yeah,
a very, very old meme.
we used to say it in like my middle school
Yep,
when we were like just complimenting guys and stuff.
yep.
It's the narrative equivalent of that two bros chilling in a hot tub 5 feet apart because they're not gay meme. I remember that. I remember that meme. It's catchy, honestly.
Wasn't it Family Guy that did that?
I don't know. I thought it was like a YouTube song or something.
Something like that. But yeah, this really is a non-point. It's just setting up a zeitgeist, and there's no reason it needed to. There's no reason it needed to have romance in it at all. Period. But if we're going based on again what the character as we're presented the character would have wanted, um, honestly, it would have made more sense to have Bucky go with Steve when they go back in the past. That would have been a nice way of dealing with that without completely lampshading Stucky. If both of the men who are out of time went back in time to sort of put everything right, that would have been a nice thematic string to pull, and it would have shut this whole
Yeah,
argument up.
I think the old man would make a lot more sense with Bucky because he was like frozen and stuff. He wasn't like given super soldier serum. I don't think at
Yeah,
least.
no, no, he didn't. I don't think he did have the aging thing there.
Yeah, he was frozen, but I think they did give him like enhanced strength and stuff, but not like
But
ageless.
they didn't use the same formula as Erskine did, so Bucky can still age.
Yeah. Uh, First, Bucky went back into cryostasis after Civil War, removing himself once again from Steve's life. Then Infinity War kept them apart, followed by Endgame emphasizing Steve's old love for Peggy.
Again, that had nothing to do with no homoing. That had everything to do with holy shit, shit's going down. We better do things. And we had, as much as they both probably would have liked to get to know each other and everything, um, the world was ending, like literally.
Yeah,
So
I mean, like, there's no way, friend. Well, spoilers for Game of Thrones, season 8. Episode 2, like right before the battle, everyone's just kind of waiting, like soldiers in the trenches. I believe I remember hearing one guy say about it. But it's just sometimes there are moments, but when it's like down to the wire, like I'm talking like this last second, there's no way you can just you can't wait for the battle to come. You have to be parent con.
proactive.
Yeah, you gotta be proactive. Uh,
In other words, it wasn't that they were trying to avoid anything, it's just that they had shit to do. And the said shit got in the way of things.
yeah, and I'm sure if there was enough time, they would have sat down and like had a drink or something. Though, granted, I don't think Captain America really drinks more on the fact that he can't get
Well,
drunk.
also, it's important to remember that he's completely immune to being drunk.
Yeah, I just said that.
Yeah.
So probably Captain America would be drinking milk while Bucky would be drinking a little bit.
No. What I'm saying is he can drink alcohol. It just won't ever get him drunk.
Yeah,
Because his metabolism.
I would like that actually. Though, granted, the liver could still probably fail.
No, it basically makes his liver invulnerable because of how his body processes things.
Weaponized nerd rage would like that a lot.
Yeah, but that would deny the world drunken weaponized nerd rage, and that's
Now,
just no. The world without the possibility of drunken weaponized nerd rage is not a world worth living in. No, thank you.
I gotta ask: have we ever seen a sober nerd rage?
Well, he's sober. He's sober actually in most of his videos. I think you can tell when he's been drinking because for the most part, he usually announces it, but he slurs his words a lot.
Okay. Eric
It's quite
Chabak.
noticeable. But drunken weaponized nerd rage is a glorious thing. All
Oh,
hail drunken weaponized nerd rage.
yeah, we gotta get him on here one of these days.
We should, yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully drunk.
I don't know. I think if he were drunk around me, I'd rub him the wrong way, and that would not go well.
Okay. What about a little drunk? Like a little
Buzzed.
tipsy. Yeah, buzzed.
Weaponized buzzed rage.
Okay, Eric Chabak. Well, that and Steve and Bucky aren't gay, so there's that. Sorry, shippers.
Again, I don't think that's quite a valid argument, Eric, because there's the possibility of bisexuality, which I'd be fine with.
Yeah. Um. Yeah, I have to agree with Dalton. Like, plus, it doesn't really matter anyway because they've been friends for so long. It really wouldn't change much if they were a couple.
Yeah, no. The only thing that would be a little bit amusing, and I've actually thought about this, and this is a complete sidebar, but before Steve got the super soldier serum, if they were gay for each other, Bucky would have definitely been the top. But simply by virtue of pure pragmatism, I think Steve would need to be the top post serum. So the funniest part about the possibility of them being gay for each other would be their sexual dynamic having to change post super soldier serum.
Plus, you also have to remember that they were born in like 1920s and lived in the 1940s.
Well,
So
but I mean, so was Derek Jarman, and he was one of the like biggest voices for gay rights back in the 20s.
well, I know. I'm just saying, like in that time frame, possibility
It,
that
it,
they
it wouldn't have been accepted, so we wouldn't have seen it out in public. But there's no reason why their backdoor shenanigans couldn't have been actual backdoor shenanigans, if you know what I'm
yeah.
saying. Well,
Okay.
I apologize for the image of Captain America sodomy that I have just now put in all everyone's head.
Not in my head. I am too pure.
We,
Well,
we need to
compared
we need to get corrupt on more of these then.
compared
Actually,
to compared to most YouTubers of our little group, our little brotherhood,
mhm,
I am the purest. I think.
probably. I
Yeah.
actually offered to have. I actually sent a message to Corrupt asking if he wanted to be on again this week. He didn't get back to me, so he must be busy.
Yeah. Okay, right before we move back onto the article, Eric shot back a couple steps. Weapon would go broke buying Steve Rogers drinks, trying to get him drunk. Anyone would.
Yep. I mean, Steve again. He is on the top of my MCU characters I would bang list. And in the game of marry, fuck, kill, I would probably marry Steve Rogers.
Who would you F?
Okay, who to fuck? Probably okay. I'd marry Steve, fuck Korg, and kill. Who do I kill? This is a good
Doctor
question.
Strange.
Who annoys me the most in the entire MCU?
Well, what are you thinking about that? Eric says, I disagree, Dalton. I ship the hell out of Gwen and Mary Jane, but I know that ain't happening. Just wanting it doesn't mean it has a chance of being so.
No,
I mean,
no, no, no. That's not what I'm saying, Eric. What I'm saying is you're ignoring the possibility of bisexuality. It could just be that these characters have preferred one gender for a while, and that they could organically discover that they also like the other gender. It has nothing to do with changing the character. It just has to do with that character making a discovery that they didn't previously make. So it's entirely possible that Steve and Bucky could work under the auspices that they're both bisexual.
I think he was defending the comic versions, not the MCU. He said, "Oh, you said MCU. Guess I'm off the hook."
Well, either way, I think it could work. I mean, Captain America is pure enough that I could totally see it working either way. But regardless, there's no reason there's no reason a person can't like both genders. So I see no reason that there's no contradiction in them suddenly deciding, oh, hey, the other gender is also looking pretty good to me right now. That doesn't invalidate the quote unquote straightness that happened previously. It just adds more shit.
Okay, so this one, might require the angry Donald sound effect. So I'm gonna have that ready. This culminates in a sequence where Steve barely acknowledges Bucky's return from the dead, and then abandons him with no warning to start a new life in the past.
Yeah, but that's mostly the result of bad writing, not fucking ideology.
Uh,
This is your problem. You once again see indifference as a slight against your ideology because you can't envision a world where other people don't operate on the same ideology as you. You think you're in such the moral right that anyone who doesn't see things the way you do is either naive or legitimately oppressive. And now you may play the clip because that's some bullshit. Sometimes only a duck with a lisp can adequately express things. Because yeah, that's some bullshit. Get on board with the idea, my darling, that people don't think the way you do, and they are under no obligation to think the way you do, because you are not the holier than thou one person to discover the one right answer to all moral things.
yeah, I totally, I agree. I agree. Is what I was trying to say. You know, I realized something about Donald Duck. Well, for one thing, you have to give so much major credit to his
Voice
uh,
actor?
yeah, the voice actor. My mind is not all here right now, but yeah, that voice is so hard to pull off.
Yep.
Also, Eric says that's easy for you to come to that conclusion because you are a boy. I'm 57. I've had the same best friend for over 40 years with no thought of romance. That's you. That's you, Eric.
Well, also there's no reason you couldn't. It's just you haven't. Saying I haven't, therefore I couldn't possibly is kind of a fallacy there, Eric. That's kind of saying that because it didn't happen. That's kind of like saying, because I didn't happen to have this thing happen, that means there is no circumstance where it could ever conceivably happen. That's complete bullshit.
All right.
And also, not to be mean, but have you ever given it serious thought, is the question.
Okay, so you shot back another thing. I'm not saying you're wrong or that it couldn't happen, but in the real world, the odds would be very much against it.
And again, I don't know about that. I think there is a significant proportion of people who find they like one thing and never feel the need to like anything else. But if they gave it serious thought, maybe they'd come around. I don't think it's quite as cut and dry as you're wanting to make it, Eric.
So basically, you have the potential to be bisexual. It's just you might prefer it for one gender more.
I don't know if I'd go that far, because I mean there are people I'm sure who have no potential whatsoever, but I am saying that there's no what I'm getting at is there is no contradiction there. People who want there to be a contradiction there don't understand how numbers work. If you like one thing and then you like a second thing, that just means you like two things. That doesn't invalidate the liking of the first thing. The thing that annoys me is when even the people that are supposed to know this shit forget that and then go, nope, they were straight for this number of years and then they're just automatically gay somehow. Like, that's not how anything works. If you have a one thing and then you add a second thing, you now have two things. That's how math functions. And if you like one gender and then you find you like a second gender, you now like two gender. That's bisexuality. You can't just. Sexuality isn't a switch you can flick. It's a continuum. And wow, I echoed there. Dang. And now it's quiet again.
I'm sorry. Okay, I was unsure if you had anything else to add. Okay, so Steve's marriage to Peggy is meant to be a satisfying conclusion, allowing Chris Evans to gracefully bow out of the franchise. But in the addition to making no sense, I wouldn't say it makes no sense. I just think when you really put thought into that, there are a lot of, um,
Plot holes.
yeah, a lot of plot holes, a lot of problems uh, with Captain America.
The first and foremost of which is that the super soldier serum is basically supposed to retard his aging, and yet it apparently did not do that, even though it's established in the MCU that that's a thing it does.
Yeah. The writers and directors can't even agree on whether Steve ends up in an alternate universe or stays in the same timeline. This,
Yes, because the writing was shit, but that had nothing to do with the morality being shit, because once again, the possibility of something being morally neutral apparently never occurs to you, but is usually the case. People don't feel the need to phrase things in moral terms all the time. You do because you have a moral ideology in your brain with which you have to see everything through. But most people are just like, nope, morality doesn't really apply here, moving on. Because people are motivated by things other than morality, don't you know?
this ending obliterates years of character development. It's a
No. It's just very poorly handled, which again has more to do with bad writing than poor morality.
Yep. It's a great example of how heteronormative expectations can hurt a story.
No, it is an example of how people forgetting how to write at the very last possible second can hurt a story. But you can't see merit in a non-moral system. For you, merit is a social construct through which only morality can provide any legitimacy. And there's your problem. You can't conceive of merit outside of a moral framework.
You're a fucking idiot.
Yes. That too.
Idiot.
Sorry. Okay, so back. Canonically, Steve and Bucky are straight, yet they're not perceived as straight enough until Steve breaks off his friendship with Bucky and returns to a woman he kissed 5 movies ago.
Again, has to do more with poor writing than any kind of morality here.
For the record, it's more than 5 movies.
Well, 5 movies that pertain to Cap, I think, is what he's getting, or what they're getting at.
Okay.
Who wrote this?
Yeah. Damn. Fucking. Okay. Gavia Baker Whitelaw. I am probably sure it's a woman.
I am not even going to attempt to pronounce that. Terms of endearment, it is.
Gabby.
Oh, right. This is still the same article. I thought we moved to a different one. Never mind.
Oh no, there is. This person likes to write.
Yeah. I think because this person enjoys seeing there's a term known as this person likes the sound of their own voice, but this person likes the look of their own writing, I think, would be a more accurate phrase. But anyway, yes, Gabby, you don't understand anything, my darling.
In a post-film interview, Endgame's writers framed Peggy as a reward Steve deserved after years of toil. By contrast, they described Steve and Bucky as being healthy enough to move on from each other after Endgame, as if that's something either character would want or need.
Okay, yes, because they did have an irrationally codependent relationship. That was the whole impetus behind I'm going to start a war for you just because someone insulted your honor, Bucky. Did you miss that in Civil War? Because it was quite obvious. Like as much as we all love Steve Rogers for his naive idealism, and we would certainly love to be Bucky in that scenario, starting a war because of one person is not something that's advisable unless you happen to be Agamemnon of Troy. Or not Agamemnon, but fuck,
Donna?
what was the fucking the commander of Troy's name in the Iliad? Never mind. It's going to bug me until I can figure it out later. But okay. But point being, unless you happen to be Paris. Paris was the guy who stole Helen of Troy in the Iliad. Unless you happen to be a guy named Paris who can afford to fight a war against ancient Greece, you really shouldn't start a war over one single person, is the point I was trying to get to with my Iliad reference there. But Steve did, and as much as we all can empathize with that and want to be in that situation, probably not a healthy or advisable thing, which is why them moving past each other or growing past each other was probably an ultimately good thing for both of them. Especially considering Bucky still has that whole I've been brain damaged for many decades at this point thing going on there. Anyway, let's continue.
Yeah. Steve's desire to reunite with Bucky is one of the main driving forces of his life. Meanwhile, in The Winter Soldier, it's Peggy who Steve needs to move on from. Their love story was cut short by circumstance, but Peggy ultimately built a life for herself, married someone else, and had kids. I agree.
Yeah, but retroactively, there's no reason that person that she married couldn't have been Steve all along.
Yeah, because
So,
I think, I do think, I don't know if it was Mark or Tim, but one of them brought up that they didn't exactly specify who the husband was to Peggy.
yeah.
Winter Soldier.
So it probably was just Steve all along.
Yeah. So that just raises so many questions.
It does, but still.
When you really think about that movie, it really does have its problems.
The time travel was so poorly handled because they didn't actually think through the temporal logic thing.
You know, when I'm writing a time travel story, I think more of like what Reverse Flash says in that Flashpoint movie, time boom. You know, when you use a time machine and cause events that change even so slightly, it causes like this
Ripple
temporal.
effect. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, uh, yeah. Okay. As one of the most beloved women in the MCU, fans always responded to Peggy's independence, which is why it's so dispiriting to see her become the silent receptacle. Receptacle.
Gabby, my dear, did you miss the part in Captain America: The First Avenger when she cried over him, and how most of Agent Carter was her still getting over him there? Like, did you miss that whole part of her character arc and how she died sad and alone because she never got a chance to get back with him, essentially, even though she did?
She had Alzheimer's in Winter Soldier,
Yeah.
so she might have
So,
forgotten.
so there's that. But yeah, her characterizing her as a stone cold badass loner is really not the case because she is very, very driven by her emotions and her heart, even when she shouldn't be, a la Agent Carter. So,
Um,
so many things, so many mistakes she makes in Agent Carter is because someone manages to get her mad and she does something stupid.
uh, I think it. Well, I think I was going to say something earlier. Steve does ultimately, technically, move on from Peggy in Endgame. Like when he could have had the chance to see her again. Uh, when they break into Shield, like the old Shield,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, that's kind of why he's able to pick up the hammer, is because he's willing to let go of the thing that was holding him back.
Yep. And he has more confidence in himself, which is the one thing he was missing. Because our boy Steve's naivete was actually also limiting him. Because lest we forget, Thor is a warrior god, and warriors have to be confident. And that was the one thing that was missing with Steve, because he can never see himself as worthy. If you can't see yourself as worthy, then you're not worthy. Is how the Thor thing tends to work.
Yeah. Uh, become the silent receptacle for Steve's happy ending.
She got a happy ending out of this too. Once again, I hate to burst this bubble, but there was more than one person in this arrangement. That's how relationships work. And you don't somehow once again you forgot all of Agent Carter and how she was constantly pining over him still.
When okay, we're also expected to believe that Peggy would marry future Steve, a near stranger, while her own Steve is still frozen in the Arctic ice, and that future Steve will abandon his Bucky in 2023. I'm not sure about that time though. Okay, so it's like 5 years, so 2018. Okay, never mind. That checks out.
Yeah.
Uh, anything to add to that, or
Um no, because okay, so all Steve would really need to say is leave younger me alone because time travel, and Peggy would probably just go, yeah, that makes sense. Or if they had a problem with it, they probably would have gone to one of their many, many scientist friends who would exposit about the nature of time travel and then be like, oh. And then she would move on to the fact that she has a Steve who, for one thing, is much bigger and much more attractive looking, post all the things he's done than is his past self. So not only does she get a Steve back, but she also gets an improved version of Steve, who
careful, careful, Dalton. I can hear you drooling.
Shush.
Okay.
In this case, my attraction to Steve is actually relevant to the argument I was making. So fuck you.
I'm not the. I was just mentioning something.
Yeah, but point being, she gets she gets an improved Steve that is done with the heroics and is entirely devoted to her. Do you not think that that is something that she would want? And if he went back to the appropriate time, he could have even come in just after the whole "I don't want to step on your toes" line, and so she would have been able to get what she wanted and not have to go through the years of apparently decades of grief that she apparently did otherwise. So I'm sorry, but I can't see this as anything other than a win-win scenario.
Eric, hashtag give Cap a Dalton.
Well, I mean, it's not a terrible plan. Uh, I think you'd have to ask his permission, but
Well,
I
wouldn't it make more sense is hashtag give Dalton a cap?
yes, that would make sense, and I would certainly be happy with that scenario. But still, shush.
This epilogue erases much of Steve's personal journey, removes Peggy Carter's agency, and destroys any chance of closure for Steve and Bucky.
It gives her everything she wants. It gives him everything he wants. It allows for the timeline to remain, intact, and it pretty much resolves all the things. The only way it doesn't really work is in a writing and character perspective. But even that can kind of be lampshaded away if you want it to be. And again, even if we accept your premise that this does any of these things, who's to say that your solution to it is the correct solution to it? Who's to say that your one answer is the one right answer? Oh, I forgot, because conceptual authority.
Well, we are nearly at the end.
My word, this woman was long-winded.
Yeah, we got 1, 2, 3. Oh, we got 3 more paragraphs.
And it's close to 1 a.m. already, so we might have to stop here and save some of the other ones for next week.
Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna have to call it, guys. Sorry.
Yeah. Let's finish the 3 paragraphs we have, and then
Ah, shit. I already exited out of it.
oy vey. Well, we'll pick up there next time then, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, we want to thank everyone coming in. I also want to, if Tim and Mark come in and watch this, which I'm not entirely sure about, I want to thank them for coming on too. Hope we gave you guys a good enough show.
And we'll see you all next week.
Yep.
Cheers, guys.
Peace.